So, what kind of gas do you fill up with? Well, tacos usually do the trick for me, but at the filling station, you've probably noticed different tabs with some numbers on gas pump buttons. Those are octane levels, varying from regular and mid-grade to premium. Each one provides a different level of octane that your specific engine type requires to function effectively. Your choice should be based on the compression ratio of your engine. So, the myth of using premium for a car that requires regular gas to gain better performance or to boost the engine's health is false. Best stick to the fuel recommended for your car. You'll save money buying the correct fuel. But what if you filled your gas tank on a cold morning, allowing the fuel to shrink? Won't it make the fuel denser, providing more value for your dollar? Well, this is another false myth. The supply tanks are buried so deep underground that the temperature inside doesn't change at all. We've all heard that the toilet bowl flushes in the opposite direction in different hemispheres, clockwise in the north and counterclockwise in the south. In theory, the Coriolis effect should indeed make the water move in those directions. But in reality, the departing water is only influenced by how it's flushed, and the direction of the flow doesn't depend on the place. Now, you're caught in a thunderstorm and there's no shelter around you. Lightning strikes suddenly, and your first thought is to run towards where it just struck. After all, lightning never strikes the same place twice, right? Wrong. The lightning did hit that spot for some reason. This might be a sign that it's a risky place. Such a spot could be easily struck again. Best find some shelter and stay away from metal objects. Eating before swimming has always been considered dangerous. People believed it caused cramps. But this isn't actually true. The only negative effect of swimming after having a meal is shortness of breath. So just make sure you keep to the shallows as your food goes down. The Great Wall of China is often claimed to be visible from space. But there's actually no building on Earth that can be visible from such a distance. You can see lights on Earth during the night, though. Albert Einstein, the greatest physicist of all time, was often mentioned for his poor math skills. People said he'd failed this subject at school. But even though Einstein did fail an irrelevant entrance exam, he was actually really good at math, even creating his own original proof of the Pythagorean theorem at the age of 12. Such a late bloomer, huh? Spring is in the air. Unfortunately, this isn't the best time for baby birds. They tend to fall out of their nests. Sometimes they end up in a dangerous place and should be taken somewhere safer. But you've probably been told that if someone touches them, their mother will no longer take an interest in raising its young. In reality, birds have a very poor sense of smell and can't tell if a human has made contact. So feel free to place them back into their nest if needed. Given our brains are so large, it's a shame we only use 10% of their capacity. Well, that's another myth. You actually use your brain to the fullest, but different parts of it work at different times during the day. Now, there was a time when warming up your car in cold weather was a necessity, and some people believe it's still true. But today, we use different cars, and it's worse for your vehicle to be left idling for too long. As for warming it up, 30 seconds is all the waiting you need. There's an old saying that relates to bats' poor eyesight, but this couldn't be more untrue. Not only do they use echolocation, which is extraordinary, but they can also see pretty well. In fact, they see better than us humans during dusk and dawn. Watching TV or staring at your computer doesn't give you square eyes or harm them in any way. Your eyes simply become strained and tired after a while, but as long as you blink enough not to let them dry out, they'll be fine. Baldness is a natural occurrence in men. Shampoos, gels, sunlight, hats, and levels of testosterone have all been blamed for the early loss of hair. But natural hair loss is purely hereditary. It can come from both sides of the family, but mainly from the father's genes. We've all swallowed our chewing gum, whether by accident or there wasn't a table to stick it under. Well, don't worry. It won't reappear 7 years from now. Your stomach will easily digest it and pass it straight on through. Purchasing makeup in bulk is a great way to save money, as makeup supposedly never expires. But it does. It can also grow bacteria, which will negatively affect your skin. So make sure to renew your supply every 12 months. Another myth about makeup is that it's harmful to the skin. But in reality, it's completely fine and can help protect your skin from pollution. Just don't forget to remove it daily. Vikings have always been admired and popular in cultures around the world. They've been pictured as brave warriors, wearing helmets with horns in them. But the truth is, they never had horns. This image was first portrayed in an opera composed by Wagner in the 19th century. And since then, the horns have been associated with Vikings. You might have been told not to wear red around bulls. But in reality, it doesn't matter what you wear, as these animals can't see color. They're usually provoked by general movement. Dogs, on the other hand, can see colors. But how they do it is different to humans. The ostrich will lay its head and neck along the ground if it sees an enemy coming. As the bird's colors match the ground, it easily blends into its surroundings. At the same time, ostriches often look as if their heads are stuck in the ground. But they are not. Ostriches wouldn't be able to breathe if that was really what they were doing. The Scottish Highlands are synonymous with beautiful landscapes, kilts, and the soothing sounds of the bagpipe. But the bagpipe isn't originally Scottish. This instrument was first used in the Middle East centuries before anyone in Europe had the opportunity to annoy their neighbors by playing this unusual instrument. Now, during deep sleep, you breathe heavily and can accidentally pull into your mouth all kinds of things. That's why you swallow 7 spiders on average per year, or so they say. But this is not possible. A spider can find nothing less appealing than a growling, fleshy pile of human that offers no food. It simply won't get near your mouth. Your fingernails don't grow at the same rate. The more the hand or finger is used, the more it promotes the growth of the nail. That's why the nails on your dominant hand grow faster than on the other. Ninjas just didn't have one color of their famous ninja uniform. Of course, black was the best to blend in at night, but they also had quite a wardrobe that contained many colors to blend in on other occasions. Shaving your hair won't make it thicker, change its color, or make it coarser. It just appears that way, since new hairs start growing back with blunt tips at the ends. The memories of goldfish last way longer than 3 seconds. These creatures can remember things for up to 3 months. You can also teach your goldfish to feed in the same place every day, amongst other tricks. Chameleons' full color of dull brown and green already blends in with their surroundings. These animals don't need their ability to change color to hide. Their amazing skills are instead used for communication and temperature control. During an earthquake, you're advised to find a doorway that is the safest place in the building. In reality, it's not safer than any other part of your house. Instead, seek shelter under a table or desk until the shaking stops. Opossums have been shown to hang upside down in many cartoons. And indeed, their tails are strong enough to allow them to hang this way for a short while. But their bodies are too large to be hanging from a branch for more than a quick picture. Now, we're all aware of the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But although puppies learn more easily, grown-up dogs can also learn tricks with ease. A trick you should avoid, though, is the one that involves your pooch licking your face. Dog saliva has slightly more alkaline pH, which can prevent bacteria from breeding. But there can be hundreds of bacteria living in a dog's mouth, which may be harmful to your skin. Nah, my dog can kiss me all she wants. Napoleon was one of the most successful emperors in human history. But in modern times, he's sometimes mocked for his short stature. However, at 5 foot 6 inches, he was above the average height for that time. Napoleon even once played point guard for the French national basketball team. Nah, I made that up.
There are things about your body you know for sure, or don't you? Can you guess what exactly is a myth or fact? 1 point is for each correct answer. Let me know your score. Brown eggs are more nutritious than white eggs. Myth or fact? Myth. There is no study saying brown eggs are healthier than white eggs. The only difference is the color of the eggshell. The color of the eggshell doesn't affect its nutrition or quality. That is related to the type of chicken. Chickens with white earlobes tend to have white eggs. Have you heard that a large amount of the dust in your home is actually decanted skin? Not cool, I know. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? This is a myth. You're not just mopping your skin flakes from the floor. Many other components make the house dust. fibers, hair, building materials, mold, pollen, insect body parts, and ash are some of them, according to the study made in Canadian houses. This makes sense because a house nearby a busy highway or in a renovation area has more dust than a house in the middle of a forest. Skin is our largest organ. Is this a fact or myth? It's a fact. You might think for a second that the intestine can be quite large when you unfold it, but nope. Skin wins the contest. An adult carries around 8 pounds and 22 square feet of skin. Can't think of us without a skin. It's not just there to cover our bodies, it has an essential role in protecting us too. You can't breathe and swallow at the same time. Myth or fact? It's a fact. Maybe you already knew the correct answer, but you tried it anyway after reading this, so see it for yourself. So in your throat, there are 2 passageways important for your survival. I'm putting aside the fancy medical names, and I'll refer to those 2 as airway and food pipe. They prevent breathing and swallowing simultaneously. Otherwise, food would enter the airway and cause severe complications. This doesn't always go as planned. That's why sometimes you end up coughing and preventing the piece of food from reaching the lungs. As well as having unique fingerprints, humans also have unique tongue prints. Is this a myth or fact? Fact! The human tongue is magnificent enough in its features that make us taste the food. It's also unique in its texture. People use biometric systems like fingerprints, voice scans, and iris scans for authentication. They are important to the identification and verification phases. Tongue print is unique, so it's very hard to copy it. It can be used as a biometric system tool too. What if people started using this system in their daily lives for safety reasons? Imagine locking a safe or your phone with a tongue print. An adult spends 3 hours in the bathroom every week. Do you think this is a fact or a myth? It's a fact. A poll by scientists reveals that an average adult spends 3 hours and 9 minutes on the toilet every week. This is more than the time they spent exercising. Take your sweet time, no need to rush. You swallow 8 spiders a year while sleeping. Myth or fact? Don't believe it. Lucky for us, and for the spiders of course, this is not true. Fear no more, and have a good night's sleep. Most spiders don't deliberately come near humans. Plus, vibrations coming from a sleeping person might be uncanny for them. Or maybe the spider just lives in the habitat. It thinks that you are flatmates sharing a room. As long as there is actual evidence, I call this a myth. Your thigh bone can resist thousands of pounds of force. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? Yes, this is a fact. People generally refer to it as tight bone, but its actual name is femur bone. This bone is located on the upper part of your leg. Experts say that this bone is hard to break. It's one of the 2 strongest bones in our anatomy. The first one is the temporal bone of the skull. If you wondered about the first one. Anyway, a tight bone can support 30 times more of your body weight. Maybe it's because the femur bone is the longest and largest bone in the human body. Do you believe that shaving your hair makes it grow back thicker? Fact or myth? Watch how I debunk that myth. Experts say shaving doesn't affect the thickness of the hair. The hair's head didn't remove, so the root is still there. You only shave the upper part. After a shave, the hair grows bluntly because it's been cut. That's why you may feel it's getting thicker. It's safe to eat food that's been on the floor for 5 seconds or less. Is this a fact or a myth? Sorry for blocking the best way you justify eating something that fell on the floor. There's no such thing as the 5-second rule. Researchers found that a substantial amount of bacteria transferred to the food within 5 seconds. The moisture of the food directly affects contamination. Imagine you drop a slice of watermelon and chips on the floor. I don't know why you're eating both together or how you end up dropping them both. But let's continue with this example anyway. The watermelon will have more contamination than chips. Because watermelon has more moisture in it, the surface of the watermelon is more open to transferring bacteria. Blondes and redheads may soon disappear. Myth or fact? An easy one, right? This is a myth. Red or blonde-colored hairs are connected to recessive genes. They can be carried from one generation to another without creating the hair color of the carrier. If both parents have the correct recessive genes, the chances are high that the next generation will have blonde or red hair. These genes are rare, but populations still have those genes carried out, so they won't get lost forever. For that to happen, literally everyone on the planet who carries that gene must disappear. So, the chances are low. Drinking coffee dehydrates you. Is it a fact or myth? Myth! You can enjoy your morning coffee. Okay, you may visit the bathroom more frequently after drinking coffee, but it doesn't mean you're losing more water. There are numerous studies made about the effects of caffeine. Some of these studies reveal that drinking a reasonable amount of coffee a day doesn't increase the risk of dehydration. Eating yogurt helps your digestion. Do you think this is a fact or just another myth? A fact, but with the right choice of yogurt. Yogurt is food containing probiotics. They are the good bacteria that make everything flow smoothly in your gut. Eating yogurt alone may not be enough to have a healthy digestive system. It supports the digestive system positively. Keep in mind, though, not all yogurts are equal. Some of them have sugar in them, or they come with toppings like candy or cookies. Go for the classic ones. Your hair will grow faster if you have it cut more often. Fact or myth? We were always told not to cry too much over the hair we lost because it would grow back faster. Unfortunately, the hair growth rate doesn't depend on how often you get a haircut. The average hair growth rate is 0.01 inches per day. Plus, many factors affect it: age, hormones, and even the time of year. Knowing this new fact may make some people postpone their hairdresser appointments.
Your dog doesn't actually have a stronger sense of smell than you do. People often talk about how dogs have a superior sense of smell, and this probably started when a researcher from the 19th century, Paul Broca, marked humans as non-smellers. No one ever provided sensory testing to support this theory, but people still believed in it for a long time. The truth is, different types of animals can identify different kinds of scents. There was an experiment done where human volunteers needed to track a scent. Researchers dipped twine in chocolate essence and then zigzagged it all across a grassy field. Volunteers weren't allowed to use other senses. For example, they were ear-muffed and blindfolded. They even wore thick gloves and knee pads. The conclusion they came to is that while we are not as effective as dogs, we can follow a scent trail and become way better if we practice. Interestingly, humans are more sensitive to certain smells compared to dogs, like fruit or flowers. This is because the evolution of dogs didn't require them to sharpen their sense of smell for these types of odors. A TV screen won't ruin your eyesight. At least, there's no evidence that looking at a TV screen can really hurt your eyes. It's the same for phone or computer screens. Looking at them may lead to eye strain or fatigue, but in most cases, it's nothing you can't ease with proper rest. That doesn't mean watching TV or staring at your phone for too long doesn't have negative consequences in other parts of your life, like reduced concentration and lack of socialization, among many other things. Being able to roll your tongue is not really a genetic trait, even though biology teachers often say this gift is based on a dominant gene. There was a study that showed 7 out of 33 twins who didn't actually share this feature. Identical twins share the same genes, which implies that they should share this trait too. But they don't, which means genes are most likely not the factor that decides if you'll be able to roll your tongue. And this myth still exists, even though it was debunked over 6 decades ago. You're going to catch a cold if you go outside with wet hair is yet another myth. To actually catch a cold, we need to have a virus inside of our body. Also, wet hair is not something that makes you more attractive to the various germs lurking around you. People mostly believe this is true because they A. heard it from their parents, and B. associate going outside with your hair being wet with getting sick because you're generally more exposed to germs when you're outside. There are no truly double-jointed people. Some individuals have certain parts of their bodies that are very flexible, so they can, for example, touch their chin with their elbow or bend their fingers backward. We often call these people double-jointed, like the secret is in them having an extra hinge somewhere. Well, it's not true. they have single joints, but they may have bones with oddly shaped ends, or their connective tissue may be very pliable. It seems the appendix, as in the organ, is useful after all, despite its poor reputation as a useless intestinal tube that pretty much goes nowhere. It seems the appendix is actually a reservoir for bacteria, but a good and helpful one. It stores microbes that assist our body when it's fighting certain problems and illnesses. In the early stage of our life, the appendix also helped us with the process of forming white blood cells, together with certain types of antibodies. Hey, do you know where the stomach is? Sounds easy, right? But it's probably not where you think. Most people believe it lurks somewhere in the area behind the belly button. In reality, it's a bit higher in the abdomen, sitting on top of the rest of the gut. Here's how you can find it. Look for the point where your lower ribs meet in the middle. Now go down approximately 3 finger widths, and then 3 to your left. Now you're supposed to be right over the center of your stomach. You don't have taste sections on your tongue. The tongue map probably showed up at the beginning of the 20th century because scientists found minute differences in how strong a taste had to be in different areas inside the human mouth to actually register. This study created a myth that each part of the tongue was responsible for different tastes. In reality, all types of taste buds are spread across all areas of your mouth, and they can detect each taste. This includes umami too, which is now accepted along with the usual 4: sweet, salty, bitter, and sour. We don't only use 10% of our brain. We use way more, even when we're sleeping. Scientists tested this statement, and one of the methods they used was measuring activity in the brain while a person was performing various tasks. Results have shown we use most of our brain most of the time. The exact percentage varies from person to person, depending on what they're doing. Plus, it's not possible to monitor every single one of our brain cells. There are billions of them after all, so you can't know the exact number of active ones at any given time. When asleep, your frontal cortex, the part responsible for, let's say, higher level thinking, and certain areas that help you sense your surroundings are still working. Humans don't just have 5 senses: hearing, taste, touch, sight, and smell. This idea originated from Aristotle, a famous Greek philosopher, who said that there was a sense organ for every sense: eyes for seeing, a tongue for tasting, and so on. But that was thousands of years ago, and he was missing the vestibular system, a key sense organ. The vestibular system is the apparatus of the inner ear that our body uses to stay in balance. Not every sense requires its own sense organ, just a different type of sensory receptor. For example, your skin alone has 4 different receptors for temperature, touch, pain, and proprioception. Proprioception is body awareness, which means that even if you move your arm behind your back, you still know it's there. Something an octopus, for example, doesn't know. So, saying we have 33 senses could be closer to the truth, not 5. These include senses of balance, temperature, thirst, and many more we need to survive. If you like cracking your knuckles from time to time, no need to worry. The whole idea that it increases risks for potential knuckle problems perhaps makes sense in the first place because that's what happens when you constantly put pressure on your joints over the years. The satisfying sound you hear happens because of bubbles bursting in the fluid that actually lubricates your joints, called synovial fluid. If you eat a big meal, you can still go swimming. You won't get cramps. The idea behind this misconception is eating a heavy meal will increase the amount of blood flow to your stomach. That way, blood won't go to your muscles, which will potentially cause cramps if you go swimming. The truth is, you probably won't feel that comfortable swimming immediately after eating a large meal, but you're safe to go if you really want to. It's even recommended to have a small snack that's rich in carbs not long before your swimming session. This will boost your energy. When you shave your body hair, you don't have to worry about it growing back darker and thicker, because this is a myth. You may believe there are some changes in the color, thickness, or growth rate of the hair. That's because after you shave, you give the follicle a blunt tip, which may look or feel darker and rougher than it was before. but that's just a perception trick. You'll see that once your hair grows in again, it will be the same as before. It's a myth that we lose a disproportionate amount of body heat through our heads. You may feel like that because our head, chest, and face are definitely more sensitive when it comes to changes in temperature. In reality, you'd be just as cold if you went out without a hat as if you weren't wearing pants. You probably feel like you're losing heat through your head because it's often one of those parts that we leave uncovered when going out. No need to worry if you wake up a sleepwalker. You're not going to seriously harm them by doing so. If you startle one, they can be quite disoriented and may have a confused reaction. Sometimes it's better to do that than to let a sleepwalker get up and start doing certain things that they shouldn't be doing while sleeping, like cooking or driving. Or you could just show them the way back to bed.
It's 6 a.m. and your first alarm goes off. You reach for it and hit the snooze button. 5 minutes later, the flying alarm gets into your bedroom. 10 minutes later, you have 2 alarms as loud as sirens and your dog barking like crazy trying to wake you up. This is your typical morning, so you decide to train yourself to get by with less sleep. Some people say you can reduce sleep time by an hour or 2 every night and feel just as good. Sleep experts debunk this myth. An average person needs between 6 and 9 hours a night. You must already know your number. You can force yourself into earlier wake-ups and feel seemingly well at first, but your sleep debt will gradually build up. As a result, your brain won't be able to function to its fullest if you don't get your needed rest time. Your concentration level will drop, your reaction will become slower, and you'll feel confused and distressed. If you know you'll have to reduce the amount of sleep for a certain period of time, try banking sleep in advance. Experiments prove going to bed a couple of hours earlier than usual every night for a week could help you suffer less once you have to sleep less. Don't make a habit out of it, though. Sleeping in on every weekend won't compensate for your sleep deprivation during the week. The 10-3-2-1-0 technique works miracles. The idea is to stop taking caffeine in any form 10 hours before bed. Then no food at all 3 hours before bed. You must stop working to take your mind off things 2 hours before sleep. No more screen time 1 hour before bed. That includes your phone, TV, and computer. The blue light emitted by them all disrupts your sleep. Finally, the 0 in the formula stands for the number of times you'll hit the snooze button in the morning. Experts confirm this technique can definitely work and help you sleep well and wake up energized the next morning. Rub the On Me On spot 100 to 200 times to fall asleep in no time. That little spot is between your earlobe and the hairline that comes up the back of your neck. Videos of people rubbing it with their thumb or forefinger have gone viral. They say it helps to relax the nervous system. Sleep experts debunk this myth as sleep is about your brain and hormones and not about massaging yourself. One way the rubbing could work out is exhausting you so much you'd fall asleep eventually. Sleeping positions don't matter. Definitely a myth. The way your spinal column is aligned and your head is supported means a lot. A bad position can cause neck or back pain or make breathing uncomfortable. You most likely sleep in one of 3 positions. The majority of people are side sleepers. This lateral position is pretty good for you, especially if you prefer the left side. Try not to curl up though. It may prevent you from breathing deeply. Sleeping on your back is called the supine position. No matter if you sleep with your arms down and close to the body, or like a starfish with your arms up over your head, it could make your low back pain worse and take your snoring to the next level. This position is good for your neck though. If you prefer to sleep on your stomach, it's the prone position. It can help ease snoring but doesn't put your neck and spine in a neutral position and puts pressure on your nerves. Put your socks on to fall asleep faster. Now, a bad idea. It won't send you to dreamland instantly, but it can be one of the clues for your brain it's time for it. Wearing socks promotes blood circulation to your feet. The vessels widen and can get rid of heat much faster. This drops down your core body temperature faster than usual, and that's what you need for a good, healthy sleep. If you don't want to go to bed with your socks on, at least let some cool, fresh air in. Your body knows it's bedtime when its temperature drops and it gets the signal it needs some good rest. The process will be much slower in a room that's too warm. Cooler bedroom air also improves your sleep quality, and you won't wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat. It also stimulates melatonin production. When you have enough of it and serotonin in your brain, you'll wake up rested and happier the next day. Immersing your face in cold water for 30 seconds is another express way to slow down your heart rate and narrow the blood vessels. It sends your body into a relaxed hibernation mode. Squeeze your muscles and you'll doze off in no time. Progressive muscle relaxation really works. Your muscles have been working all day, and they also need to unwind, just like your mind. You can go from your head down to your toes or in the opposite direction. Start with a deep breath. Then tense your toes. Hold them for 5 seconds and then relax them for 30 seconds. Move to your calves and thighs and do the same. Contract and relax. Continue to your abs and the backside. Move up to your hands, then arms and shoulders. Don't rush, go muscle by muscle and focus your mind on what you're doing. No external thoughts allowed. Finally, work your chest, neck, and don't forget about your face. Tighten your jaws and then relax them. If you're feeling lazy to do all that, at least work out your toes as you lie in bed. Curling and uncurling them for a while is a great way to release the tension from your entire body. It's so repetitive, your body is slowly moving into sleep mode. The sound of frying bacon can make you sleepy. Science has it that the comforting and repetitive sound of bacon sends some chilling vibes to your brain. It's perfect for falling asleep and as white noise while you're working and need to focus on something. You don't have to fry bacon before bed. Listening to a recording of it will do. Speaking of bacon, certain foods can also help you drift off. The secret is to have Brinner, breakfast for dinner. Bananas help your muscles relax, thanks to potassium. Eggs are rich in protein that promotes healthy sleep. Almonds slow down your heart rate a bit. Oats and honey send the right amount of melatonin to your brain. Chicken or turkey has tryptophan in it, which boosts the production of relaxing mood hormones. Yogurt and other dairy products like milk have the same effect. Foods you should avoid before going to sleep, unless you want to be awake all night, are cheese, fatty foods, all things spicy, and of course, coffee. A long daytime nap is great for you. Naps are fine, but you better keep them under 1 hour and enjoy them before 2 to 3 p.m. If you nap for longer, you'll likely fall into the deep stages of sleep. You'll wake up with a groggy feeling and not refreshed at all. You'll also likely sleep off some of the sleep debt you have from the morning. It means you could have trouble falling asleep at night. To get the most productive nap, set an alarm to limit your nap to 10 to 20 minutes. Nap around the halfway point between your wake-up and the time you want to go to bed. Find a dark, cool, and quiet place. Don't think about your work tasks or problems. Focus on what you're going to get from this nap. You gotta stay awake all night to cure jet lag. This is a popular myth, as depriving yourself of sleep won't help you adjust to the new time zone. There is no cure for jet lag, but you could try spending as much time outside as you can. Natural light should help you feel better and get some sound sleep. You can start preparing yourself for your future trip ahead of time. If you're traveling east, say from New York to London with a 5-hour time difference, start shifting your schedule 4 or 5 days before the trip by 1 hour. So by the time you get there, you'll be used to local time. When it's time to go back home, the same tips will work. You can also start preparing yourself and adjusting your bedtime in advance. Hey, I want to go to London or New York, either one.
Some so-called survival experts claim that in a critical situation, when you're out of water, it's okay to go number 1 and then drink this, nature's lemonade. Well, listen closely. That's nothing but an extremely dangerous myth. Not only is it gross, but it won't quench your thirst either. Even more, you're going to experience the opposite effect and get dehydrated at a much faster rate. You see, this bladder brew is the last step in your body's attempt to get rid of waste. No wonder it's brimming with waste products, which you should, by no means, reintroduce into your poor dehydrated body. However, it works just like water when you want to cool your body temperature a bit. Feel free to use your yellow rivers to dampen your clothing in case you want to freshen up. Another popular myth about hydrating your body speaks about sucking on a stone if you end up dehydrated. Well, while it's sort of true that sucking on a stone can help stimulate saliva flow, it's actually an ancient survival technique that people once used worldwide. But it doesn't provide actual hydration since, obviously, you can't get any water from the stone itself. Moreover, there is a risk of accidentally inhaling the stone if it's small, and it can potentially lead to choking. And finally, you never know what this stone experienced in life before you somehow decided to suck on it. Now, you might have heard that moss grows on the north side of trees, and you can use this knowledge to navigate through a forest. Well, I must disappoint you. Contrary to popular belief, and to what is often depicted in cartoons and movies, moss doesn't consistently grow on the north side of trees. The growth of moss depends on the species and the local climate. It thrives in areas where conditions are the most favorable, and it has nothing to do with the north or south. So don't rely on this rule too much. So space blankets actually do work. Despite their thin, trash bag-like appearance, mylar-coated emergency blankets can indeed keep you warm. The key lies in their aluminum coating, which is thermal reflective. This allows the blanket to reflect infrared energy and retain heat. If you're experiencing shock or exposure, your body loses heat to the air, and it leads to a drop in body temperature. A space blanket helps prevent this by keeping moisture in your clothes and reducing evaporation, which in turn limits heat loss. Wrap yourself in one of those tinfoil-like sheets and you'll stay much warmer. Another plus, these blankets are compact and affordable, so don't forget to throw them in your backpack before heading out. Now, loads of people think that when they're lost outdoors, they need to find food first. That's a dangerous belief. In this kind of emergency situation, prioritize water and shelter over food. A study from 2009 indicates that humans can survive up to 2 months without food and between 8 to 21 days without both food and water, even though this number varies based on individual and environmental factors. In survival situations, finding water and shelter is far more critical than getting food. In harsh conditions, you might only last 3 hours without adequate shelter and 3 days without water. If you have water and shelter, it significantly increases your chance of survival. Unfortunately, there are also many misconceptions about treating hypothermia, like the statement that a hot tub can cure this condition. Now, it's true that rewarming is essential when dealing with hypothermia, where the body's core temperature drops below the normal 98.6 degrees. But placing a hypothermic person into a hot tub can cause extreme pain and may even trigger a serious health condition, like a heart attack. Instead, put hot water bottles under the person's armpits or use skin-to-skin rewarming. Avoid using high heat sources. They can be extremely harmful in this situation. Another myth connected to hypothermia is that you should let a hypothermic person sleep. In reality, it's crucial to keep them awake while warming them up. Symptoms like shivering, confusion, slurred speech, and clumsiness indicate severe hypothermia, and drowsiness can follow. Allowing a hypothermic person to sleep can be dangerous, potentially leading to the worst possible outcome. Stay alert and make sure that the person remains conscious while you're warming them up. How about feeding a hypothermic person? You may have heard that you should by no means do it, but this is actually false in mild to moderate cases of hypothermia. The treatment for hypothermia differs from that of normal shock. Feeding someone in shock is dangerous because they might throw up and choke if they lose consciousness. However, in moderate cases of hypothermia, Small, repeated doses of high-calorie foods are beneficial. Such foods generate metabolic heat, helping the hypothermic person regain their ability to produce body heat. Now, when lost in the wilderness, you can eat anything animals eat. Well, hold on. It might be one of the most dangerous survival myths. Although humans share some biological similarities with other animals, there are significant differences in our dietary tolerance. Some plants that are safe for animals can be extremely dangerous for humans. Birds, for example, consume a variety of berries, some of which are toxic to us. Even squirrels, which typically eat nuts, safe for humans, sometimes gnaw on mushrooms and nuts that can make us feel very unwell. Just because an animal eats something doesn't mean it's safe for you to munch on. There is a belief that to find water, you should follow flying birds, but this method is super unreliable. While some aquatic birds rarely stray far from water, many species roam extensively in search of food. There are people who believe that geese fly toward water at dusk, but these birds might just be heading to a clearing to rest for the night. A common belief is that if you can dent wood with your thumbnail, it's suitable for starting a friction fire. This myth is quite widespread, but it isn't reliable. Some softer woods that pass the thumbnail test are ineffective, while some denser woods are quite good for friction fires. The success of the thumbnail test is coincidental. It's not a dependable method altogether. So stop destroying your poor nails. Another misconception connected with friction fires is that you should use hardwood to get the best flames. While oak and other hardwoods are excellent for general firewood, they are not ideal for friction fires. Hardwood's high ignition temperature and density make it unsuitable for friction fire drills or boards. Instead, you can use non-resinous softwoods like cottonwood, basswood, cedar, and willow, which are much better suited for starting friction fires. Meanwhile, in an emergency situation, eating raw meat and seafood can help you survive. Well, that's not entirely true. Indeed, survival shows often depict hosts eating all kinds of raw things, but this isn't the best survival practice. Raw animal meat contains pathogens, including bacteria, viruses, and other microorganisms. They can easily cause serious and hard-to-diagnose illnesses in humans. Many people consume sushi and don't experience any health issues. But that's because certain raw seafood from saltwater is safe because the pathogens it contains are not harmful to humans. To minimize health risks, always make sure that meat and seafood are properly cooked before you eat them. Rubbing two sticks together isn't likely to produce a fire. Of course, friction is a real way to create a flame. But friction fires techniques require patience, practice, and even a bit of luck. It might look easy in movies or TV shows, but don't get overconfident, thinking you'll be able to do it without tons of practice in a stressful situation. If you're still eager to try it out, use a downward speed motion rather than a lot of force. Okay, so let's say you don't have enough patience to start a friction fire, but you do have matches. Well, they got wet at one point, but they're all dry now. Great! Not really. It's a myth that when dried, matches will work as they're supposed to. You see, the chemicals used in matches are vulnerable to humidity and moisture. Regular safety matches have a package with a striking surface that's made of a gritty material, for instance, powdered glass mixed with phosphorus. The head of the match is also made with grit, along with sulfur and an oxidizer. A tiny amount of heat that is created when you strike a match is caused by the friction of the glass powder grinding together. It converts the phosphorus into white phosphorus and it begins to catch fire. Match heads that were wet at one point simply won't light because of the careful chemical balance inside is all messed up. So if you're heading somewhere where there's a chance to get wet, either invest in waterproof matches or keep your matches in a waterproof container. Some people believe that a big fire can beat a shelter. In reality, though, even a fire made from large logs can't be an excuse to skip that important step. It can start raining heavily, and the flames will go out in no time. Plus, it's not that cool to sleep in the open. Wild animals aren't going to miss out on a delicious meal, like you. So, it's always a good investment to take the time to build a shelter that will protect you from the elements and wild animals. There's a myth that all base layers work equally well. Unfortunately, this is not true. For example, cotton might lead to hypothermia if you rely on it as your primary base layer when the weather's cold. This fabric is great for wearing around the house, but it's better to use it in hot, dry climates. Once cotton gets wet, its insulating properties become non-existent. As soon as you start sweating, the moisture will soak into the cotton fibers and your clothes will begin cooling your body through conduction. And keep in mind that cotton fibers can keep up to 27 times their weight in water. And then, they'll store that liquid for up to 8 times longer than wool or synthetic fabrics. So the rule is, if it's cold enough for a onesie, then it's too cold for cotton. One of the most popular and dangerous survival myths depicted in movies and described in books is that you can suck the venom from a snake bite. In reality, it doesn't work. Even worse, it opens the affected person to a larger risk of infection by creating a bigger wound. And that's a wound with bacteria swarming human spit inside. Ew. Just put a pressure dressing on the wound and try to get medical help as fast as possible. Now, one might think that with a GPS, you'll never get lost. Of course, you should always take a GPS unit with you when you go hiking, if you have one. Keeping a GPS device with you will give you peace of mind, but you should keep in mind that these gadgets aren't fail-safe. You can misplace or break your device, or it can run out of battery. That's why you better have a map and compass, as well as the knowledge how to use them as a backup. After all, navigation isn't only about knowing which way to go. It's also about knowing where you are at the moment. There is a common belief that if you're stuck in a snowy environment without access to drinking water, consuming snow is the best way to rehydrate. However, this is a misconception and can actually lead to further dehydration. Why so? Well, when you eat snow, your body expends energy to melt and warm it up, which causes you to lose liquids faster. Plus, consuming snow can lead to hypothermia, a condition that is especially dangerous if you're alone in the wild. Snow might also contain harmful bacteria that can make you ill. If you have no other choice than to consume snow, melt it first using some sort of heat. Plus, avoid snow that doesn't appear fresh and white. Yeah, avoid that kind. If you experience frostbite, it's crucial to deal with it quickly. It's a dangerous misconception that you need to apply hot water to the affected area. In reality, it can worsen the damage. Instead, if medical help isn't immediately available, remove any wet clothing and submerge the frostbitten area in warm water. Prevent the affected area from refreezing and keep it elevated to minimize swelling. Apply a bandage to the area. If it's your finger or toes, wrap each one separately and place cotton pads in between them. They shouldn't touch. And remember this, never ever rub the frostbitten area. Should you find yourself lost in the wilderness, try to find a stream or small creek and follow it downstream until it joins a larger river. It'll likely lead you to civilization. Do not believe the myth that water is safe to drink if animals drink it. Always purify any water you find to avoid serious health problems. Even clear water can contain dangerous microorganisms. It's also a myth that it's safe to drink small amounts of salt water. This can actually lead to dehydration much more quickly than not drinking water altogether. Use salt water to cool down your body in hot weather, but don't drink it. So, you stumble upon a cave while lost in the wilderness, and it seems like an ideal shelter. especially if you have matches and can find wood nearby. But keep in mind that you should never build a fire inside the cave. The heat can cause the rocks to expand and potentially break, leading to a rock fall or landslide. Instead, build your fire outside the cave to stay safe and warm. When you realize you are lost during a hike, stop moving immediately. It may seem counterintuitive, but staying put and creating a shelter increases your chances of rescuers finding you. This approach also prevents you from dehydration caused by continuous movement. Now, you might have heard that if you come across an unfriendly swarm of bees, you should jump into the water and the buzzing creatures will leave you alone. The problem is that bees are patient. They will wait for you to resurface. Instead, run in a straight line as fast as you can until the bees give up the chase. Better yet, find a shelter in a car, house, or a public bathroom. Now, here are a few more survival tips as a bonus. Keep them in mind, and you'll be prepared for any kind of emergency. Upon encountering a snake, do not approach it and don't try to scare it away. Snakes are sensitive to vibrations, so making noise by raising your voice, clapping, or stomping can encourage it to retreat. If possible, simply walk away from the reptile. If you're falling from a cliff, and you can think, try to break your fall into several shorter parts to absorb the impact. Grabbing onto sturdy objects like bushes or rocks can slow your fall and increase your chances of survival. Good luck! If you've fallen through ice into freezing water, do not try to pull yourself out by grabbing the ice edge directly. It'll likely break. Instead, kick your legs to position your body horizontally and then wriggle out onto the ice. Once on the ice, stay spread out to distribute your weight and prevent further breaks. If you spot a whirlpool at sea, stay calm. Understand the direction of its spin, ride along its side, and use its current to propel yourself out of danger. If trapped, take a deep breath and wait for a chance to swim away as the whirlpool weakens. If trapped under debris during an earthquake, protect your respiratory system and conserve your air supply. Use your shirt as a makeshift hood to shield your face from dust and debris while you attempt to reach the surface. When stuck in quicksand, keep your head and arms above the surface. Wiggle your legs slowly to allow the quicksand to fill the space and create more room for movement. Stretch out on your back to increase your surface area and use gentle movements to free yourself. If you're out of kindling for starting a fire, use junk food, for example, chips. They can serve as effective substitutes for dry leaves due to their high fat content. Spaghetti noodles can also be used in a pinch.
So, if you have some matches and they've gotten wet, don't waste time drying them. The chemical compound can be changed by water and the matches will simply not work. To cure hypothermia, don't get into a hot tub. Fill some bottles with warm water and put them under your armpits. That will help you warm up better than the hot tub for sure. When you're thirsty and don't have much water, don't save it to last you longer. This can lead to further dehydration. Instead, drink every drop of it and try to find more water ASAP. So hydration is a must no matter the weather. But the idea that drinking hot liquids will warm you better is a myth. No amount of hot liquid can raise your body temperature. Plus, you can drink cold water faster than a hot drink, and that will help with hydration. Never poke a beehive because its inhabitants will get defensive. You think? And trying to escape by jumping into a lake or a river won't do any good. Bees will wait for you to resurface and attack you. After you poke the hive, run as fast as you can and don't look back. Sucking the venom out of a snake bite wound is likely to introduce more bacteria into the wound and even poison the person trying to help. Instead, take a photo of the snake, lie down while waiting for help, and try to stay calm. One of the most logical things to do when you're cold is to layer up. Now this is mostly true, but not if you put on cotton clothes. When cotton gets wet, it loses all its beneficial properties and can make you feel much colder. You should always wear wool clothes because they're much better insulators. Never drink cactus water. It can give you a nasty stomachache and even paralyze you, unless it's a fishhook cactus. But even then, it's too risky. Instead, try eating the fruits from the plant. They're full of juice. When you're chased by some predator, never jump off a cliff into the water. This is much more dangerous than meeting the predator. If you jump from a high place, the water surface will feel as hard as concrete, or the water might be too shallow and you'll hit the bottom. GPS is not the best navigational tool. It's reliable and easy to use, but it can break down. So you should learn how to use a map and a compass. They won't let you down if you know how to use them correctly. A puddle of water might look bad and smell a bit, but water is water, right? Well, unfortunately, boiling it can eliminate the bacteria, but not the heavy metals it contains. Those can cause serious health problems. A better option is to find some stream water to boil. Consuming random berries in the forest is dangerous. First, you need to check if they smell okay. If they have a pear or almond smell, avoid them. Next, get one, rub it on your forearm, and wait for 15 minutes. If your skin starts to itch, don't eat those berries. If you bite on a berry and it has a bitter, tingly, or soapy taste, spit it out. Never suck on stones to get some water. It is believed that when you're doing it, your body produces more saliva and it hydrates you. This is not true. If you don't drink water, nothing will help. Even worse, you can choke on the stone. Eating raw meat and fish is really dangerous. Yeah, we eat sushi, but it's normally saltwater fish, which is mostly safe. In the wilderness, always cook meat and fish before eating it. Moss doesn't only grow on south-facing surfaces. It can grow anywhere, depending on the temperature. So never use it to navigate. You'll be better off using some more reliable sources. For example, keep in mind that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Following birds to find water is a myth. They could be flying anywhere. Land animals like deer are a much better option. They usually know where the source of water is. Many survivalists claim that you should eat whatever animals around you are eating. Bad news, this is entirely false. Birds and squirrels consume berries that are super dangerous for us, but they don't harm them. And some animals eat poisonous plants to become venomous. Now, if a leech attaches to you, never burn it off. This can cause the animal to basically throw up directly inside your skin and cause massive infection. Try using a credit card to break the seal and remove the leech. Or if you're brave enough to wait for an hour, the parasite will fall off once it's fed. No matter how strong you are, punching a shark in the nose will not save you. It's a common belief that they have tons of nerves in the nose, and somehow that makes them vulnerable, but it has been proven wrong. If you find yourself in shark-infested waters, punching the animal in the gills or the eyes is much more effective than hitting the nose. After spending some time in the forest, you realize you're lost, and the first thing you start looking for is food. But you can actually live 6 weeks without food. The first thing you must do is find water and shelter from the elements. Do this and worry about the food later. Don't play possum when you encounter a bear. If it's a black bear, you won't be playing for long. Soon it'll be a reality. You should play possum only if it's a brown bear. Now remember the saying, if it's black, fight back. If it's brown, lay down. If it's white, good night. You shouldn't swim parallel to the shore if you find yourself in a rip current. Instead, try swimming at an angle away from the current and toward the shore. Remember, you shouldn't feel too much resistance while swimming. When you're lost, don't spend all your energy trying to make a fire. Try building a shelter first. This can protect you from the elements, and you'll have a place to rest and sleep after a long, exhausting day of surviving. Bonus tip:
Always build a bed in your shelter. You'll be warmer when you're off the ground. Now, being stuck in the desert will for sure make you hot. But to avoid getting even hotter, don't take any clothes off. The fabric serves as insulation and keeps you cool, unless it's a thick wool sweater, of course. Most people living in hot climates wear white clothes covering their whole bodies to avoid getting overheated. Eating snow can cause further dehydration. Your body will use more energy to melt the snow and thus more liquid. Take your time and melt the snow first, and then you can drink the water. Also, make sure you're only melting pure white snow. Discoloration means it contains something else besides water, especially if the snow is, yellow. If you stay in the cold for too long, you might get nasty frostbite. If you recognize the symptoms, never rub your hands together. It can damage your skin even more. The best thing to do is to seek immediate medical care. So, you see a cave, and the first thing you do is start a fire. Cave people did that all the time, so it must be okay, right? Wrong. The buildup of smoke can be very harmful. Instead, try covering yourself with some plant leaves to warm up. Getting stung by a jellyfish hurts a lot, and taking a leak on a jellyfish sting will not help you. It'll make the situation much worse. Wash the area with salt water and ask for medical assistance. It'll save you from an uncomfortable situation. Trust me on this.
Many sci-fi movies can make you believe that everything happening in space is accompanied by some kind of sound effect, which is a totally false misconception. In space, no one will hear you scream. There's no air in space. It's an almost perfect vacuum. And the sound waves don't travel through a vacuum. They can't reach your eardrums and make them vibrate, sending signals to your brain. But it's a good thing, especially for astronauts on spacewalks. If not for the quietness of space, they would be constantly overwhelmed by the noise of solar storms. Huge space explosions sure look super impressive. Whether they're scientifically possible or not is another question. Blasts on our home planet look the way they do because of air and gravity. You see, the air functions as an oxidizer, and the outward pressure makes everything fly into the air and then collapse back to the ground. But this process is very different in space, and it looks even cooler. If a blast occurred in space, there would still be some fire despite the lack of air, because some kinds of fuels can act as oxidizers. But it wouldn't be the fire you're imagining now. This cosmic fire would look like an expanding ball of light. It would be a seemingly never-ending process due to microgravity and the lack of air resistance. Nearby spaceships would be in grave danger since the shrapnel would fly outward until something eventually stops it. All comets have beautiful long tails. Huh? It's nothing but a popular misconception. In reality, comets are very difficult space bodies to spot. They usually spend large amounts of time far away from stars. There, in the darkness of space, they remain rather inactive and completely frozen. Comets only get tails once they come close to a star. That's when they start warming up. This process makes them form some kind of a cloudy atmosphere, which is called a coma, and a distinctive tail. The tail always points away from the star that influences the comet. It happens because the tail gets blown in the opposite direction by solar radiation and solar winds. That's why the tail can often be in front of the comet, not trailing after it. The inner and outer planets of the solar system are separated by the asteroid belt, a ring of asteroids and other debris and space objects orbiting around the Sun. While creating movies about space, filmmakers make sure to somehow use this region. Usually, they show the asteroid belt as an extremely crowded place with dense clouds of huge rocks you have to skillfully maneuver to get through to the other side. In reality, if you looked outside your spaceship while flying through this region of space, it would feel as if you're looking at the sky from Earth. All because of the ginormous distances in space. If you decided to cross the asteroid belt, there would be very little chance of a collision with a space object. Asteroids there are really spaced out and very far from one another. Black holes are giant, scary cosmic vacuum cleaners, they say. But in reality, black holes are more like fly traps. They don't look for things to munch on. Instead, they sit out there quite passively. Only when a star or any other object comes too close does a black hole spring into action. Even so, only those space bodies that cross a certain border get ripped apart. In fact, black holes aren't any different from any other celestial body since their pull is directly proportional to their mass. They can't swallow anything bigger than what their size allows. Even if our sun was somehow replaced with a black hole as massive as itself, nothing would change for Earth or any other planet in the solar system. Gravitationally speaking, of course. Space battles in movies often involve using lasers. But if you were to see such a fight from up close, you would probably be disappointed. The thing is, it would be like nothing in movies. A laser beam is a concentrated burst of energy, and it could indeed be used for many purposes during a fight. But a real-life laser beam would be totally invisible in space since there wouldn't be any particles around to scatter the light and make the beam bright red or green or any other color. A human would be torn into pieces if they got into open space without a spacesuit. Well, contrary to popular belief, taking off a spacesuit during a spacewalk wouldn't be as dramatic as it's often pictured in movies. A person would just lose consciousness due to a lack of oxygen after 15 seconds of being in outer space without protection. But that's if this person breathed out as much air as possible. Otherwise, this oxygen would damage their lungs from the inside, making them rupture. After that, without the protection of the spacesuit, the pressure inside their body would drop. This would cause even more serious trouble. And even though this person definitely wouldn't burst, they wouldn't want to stay outside for too long. People often believe that in space you experience zero gravity, hence the weightlessness astronauts feel on the International Space Station. But that's not exactly true. Gravity is one of the most important forces that exist in the universe. Thanks to it, the Moon orbits Earth and the Sun doesn't float away out of our home Milky Way galaxy. Astronauts on the ISS do experience the effects of gravity, but that's not full-fledged. It's microgravity. The gravity on the space station is only 10% weaker than the gravity on Earth's surface, but astronauts are constantly in freefall. The spacecraft, people inside, and all the objects aboard keep falling forward, not down, but around our planet, following a specific orbit. And since they're all falling together, the crew and the stuff inside seem to be floating. That's why astronauts can move things as heavy as hundreds of pounds with their fingertips. And even though microgravity is often called zero gravity, they are very different things. A light year must mean time, right? Not really. Light years actually measure distance. NASA's definition of a light year goes like this: the total distance that a beam of light moving in a straight line travels in a year. And since light moves at a speed of 186,000 miles per second, a light year equals almost 6 trillion miles. It may seem as if the sun is always on fire. At least that's what it looks like in pictures and in movies. But in reality, our star is a giant ball of gas. Nuclear reactions happening in its core at all times make the sun burn. Every second, hundreds of millions of tons of hydrogen are converted into almost as much helium. During this process, huge amounts of energy are released as gamma rays. Then these rays turn into light. In other words, the sun does emit blinding light and incredible heat, but it's not actually on fire, because no oxygen is involved in the process. The speed of light is believed to be the ultimate barrier for people when it comes to space travel, and it's often thought to be impassable. There are many theories about what it might be like to reach that speed, but none of the equations account for going above it. And still, we know that at least one thing in the universe is faster than the speed of light: the rate of its expansion. Yep, the universe is expanding faster than the speed of light, baffling astronomers and casual sky watchers alike. Or at least we can say so in terms of the speed of different objects, like faraway galaxies relative to each other. At the moment, it's not something scientists understand well. The rate of the expansion of the universe is proportional to how far something is, too. The farther it is from us, the faster it's moving away. But even though we don't get the mechanics of it yet, we've got our proof, even though it's theoretical so far, that some particles might be able to travel faster than the speed of light. Some scientists think there could be more things out there in space that could challenge this speed barrier. All we need to do is find them. Hey Mythbusters! Today we're debunking some classic space myths. Hop on the next space shuttle and let's get to the bottom of these tales once and for all. Picture this. You're floating weightlessly in space, sipping on a cup of delicious hot chocolate, when a peculiar thought pops into your head. Can you scream in outer space? And if yes, would anyone hear that scream?
If you've watched the movie Alien, then you know the answer to this one. You can't hear sounds in outer space.
It's not that sounds don't exist.
It's just that you can't hear them.
There's no one better to clarify this myth than Chris Hadfield. He's been on a couple of spacewalks during his life as an astronaut. And once you're out there in the darkness of space, you can't hear anything.
All you hear is silence. Complete silence.
But hey, just around the corner is a massive ball of explosion, aka the sun. We just can't hear the explosions happening because there's no medium for sound to travel through. It would be quite uncomfortable for an astronaut, though, if they could hear all the noises going on in outer space. Now, imagine you're zipping through space, feeling like a futuristic superhero, when a shooting star passes by your side. But wait, is it really a star? Unfortunately, shooting stars are not stars at all. They are small space rocks known as meteoroids, entering Earth's atmosphere and creating a stunning light show. Oh, and since we're debunking myths, let's head straight for another one. You've probably heard that meteors only crash into Earth on extremely rare occasions, like once every dinosaur extinguishing apocalypse. That's not true. Scientists estimate that about 48 tons of meteoritic material fall on Earth each day. But almost all of this material is vaporized in Earth's atmosphere. The bright trail we see in the night sky is what we popularly call a shooting star. Next time you make a wish upon a shooting star, remember, you're actually hoping on a tiny piece of space debris. It's not so romantic after all. Can we or can we not fly into the stratosphere on air balloons? Apparently, we can. The Earth's stratosphere starts relatively close to the ground, about 7 or 8 miles up from the Earth's surface, but it continues a long way up. If you were to fly yourself all the way into the stratosphere with some type of air balloon, just make sure you have really good equipment at hand. You'll need a special suit and some breathing devices because air starts to get pretty thin the higher you get. Of course, if you do go all the way up, you need to get a picture of the Earth's curvature. So take a chest harness with you where you can put a special camera or something like that. And how about you live stream the whole thing? That would be a first! Imagine it's been 102 days since you left Earth. You've adapted well to life in outer space, but something weird is happening to your body. You're getting taller. How is that even possible? Don't stress about it, it's completely normal. The truth of the matter is, you're not getting taller. This is what happens to your body when it's not under the effect of gravity. Our body has natural space between vertebrae and joints. On Earth, this space is almost completely squeezed due to the force of gravity. But in space, your body gets some time off of the pushing force of gravity and begins to stretch more and more. So yes, astronauts can grow up to 3% taller when they're on long missions. And here's a curiosity. NASA has that all covered when they're tailor-making spacesuits, of course. This way, astronauts will always have extra space in their suits. Once astronauts are back on Earth, the anti-gravity effect will wear off. so maybe they'll spend a few days wearing capri pants before it fits perfectly on their bodies again. Never have I ever pictured an airplane door bursting open mid-flight and a bunch of passengers being sucked into the atmosphere like flying feathers. Well, I'm betting most of you have had similar thoughts when getting inside a plane. Now imagine if this were to happen in outer space. Common knowledge says that if an astronaut is sucked out of an airlock, this person would be burnt to a crisp. Brace yourselves, because this is not only true, but the reality of it is way worse. According to astronaut Chris Hadfield, this is what would happen. The part of your body in the shade of the sun would experience temperatures of -418 degrees Fahrenheit, while the part of you getting sunlight would burn at around 480 degrees Fahrenheit. Your lungs would collapse, and your blood would start to boil like tea water. So you would burn, freeze, lose your ability to breathe, and boil. Yikes! How many times have you heard that astronauts have to work out every second of every day, otherwise they'll pass out? This is a complete myth. Remember we talked about gravity earlier? Due to the lack of gravity in outer space, our bodies don't have to do any heavy work. Our torsos don't have to sustain the weight of our heads, and we don't have to make any effort to move our legs because, essentially, there's no walking in outer space. Now imagine living like that for 6 months, or even a year of your life. Your muscles could turn into jello. That's why astronauts work out. They'll strap themselves and run on a treadmill, or they'll do some weightlifting in a special machine. This way, their muscles won't feel the lack of gravity too much. They do need to keep hydrated though. You know what? If I was an astronaut, I'd ask NASA if I could take my super soft water flask up into space with me. You've probably heard that space smells like burnt steak or barbecue sauce. Now, as much as this sounds absurd, this myth is more true than it is false. Astronauts obviously can't smell space when they're in it because they can't take off their helmets. They usually smell it once a space vehicle docks and they open up a hatch. Apparently, what causes this smell is the presence of hydrocarbons that float around in space. Who would have thought, huh? Hey smart people, let me ask you a question. Do you really think that if astronauts fly at the speed of light, they won't age a single second? I knew you'd say no. Let's get a few things straight. First of all, we haven't figured out how to operate vehicles at the speed of light. This would require an immense amount of energy, and we don't have the technology to do that. Second, even if we managed to send a human inside a spacecraft that traveled at the speed of light, this person would still age. They would age differently than the people who remained on Earth, that's a fact, but they would still age. Do you lot really think there's such a thing as immortality? Nah. If you've seen the first Avatar, then you certainly remember that humans only managed to get to Pandora because they traveled in cryosleep. In other words, they froze their bodies, put them in a cryobed, and traveled for years without aging. Yes, this sounds amazing, but we still don't have the technology to do that. Our bodies are mainly made out of water, right? And when you freeze water, it expands. That's why you should never leave soda cans unattended in your freezer. Right now, if we froze a person's body, the water inside of it would expand, harming tissues and organs. So no, we can't cryosleep our way into interstellar travel. Not yet, at least. Here's a crazy thought. What would happen if an astronaut took a drone with him on one of their spacewalks? Unless it's a NASA-designed drone, maybe the thing would freeze and burn like humans would if they went into space without a suit. But hey, a person can dream, can't they? You've probably seen at least one epic quicksand movie scene in your life. Watching a person gradually sink in the sand might cause tangible anxiety and even give you asthma sensations. Movies taught us to believe that falling into quicksand without any help around is fatal, and struggles only help to bring the sad ending closer. This myth may cause problems in real-life situations, so let's debunk it. When researchers studied quicksand, they revealed that it tends to thicken with time, but it still remains very sensitive to movements, even small ones. At higher stresses, quicksand can liquefy in a blink of an eye, But thankfully, a person who tries to swim out of the quicksand will never manage to drown completely. Humans just aren't dense enough. Quicksand is basically water mixed with fine sand and clay. And the density of the human body is twice lower. So, unless you're a superhero made of an unknown massive metal, there's no reason for panic. Remember that you would probably descend about up to your waist without going any further. Although you might feel the tension in your chest, the quicksand will allow you to float away. It might be harder to get out once the sand sediment begins to form. In this case, the quicksand's viscosity will increase and require solid amounts of force. So, let's say you've just stepped into quicksand. How to get out? First of all, if you're wearing a backpack or something heavy, drop what you're carrying immediately. If possible, get rid of your shoes too. It usually takes a minute for the mud to liquefy, so you can try to take a couple of quick steps back. But if you feel that you're stuck, avoid taking large steps. Movie characters usually begin to yell and their friends tug on them with all their might, but in fact, it's not so safe for your body. Just wriggle your legs around to create a space between the body and the quicksand. This way, water can flow down to loosen the sand. It's important to do it slowly and gently. And if you happen to sink up to your hips or higher, bend backward. This way, it will be harder to sink. Keep on floating on your back and gently pull your legs out of the trap. Once your legs are free, you can use your arms to smoothly propel yourself backwards as if you were swimming. When you find yourself at the edge of the quicksand, carefully roll to hard ground. Also, it will be good to carry a stick when you walk in risky areas. It's helpful when you need to detect upcoming quicksand, and if you're already stuck, you can put it horizontally behind your back. It will create a bridge on which you can lean while crawling out. By the way, an object with a higher density would still float on a quicksand. Aluminum, for example, is almost 1.5 times more dense than quicksand. When researchers placed an aluminum ball on top of a container with specially created quicksand, the ball remained on the surface. When they began shaking the container gently, the ball stayed floating on top. But when they shook it a bit harder, the ball sank to the bottom. So, if, say, you dropped a pack of cash on quicksand and you want it back, pull it very carefully using long tongs. And avoid touching the mud itself. Phew! Finally got out of the sandy trap, but here crawls a creepy snake and another movie myth. Green anacondas are one of the largest snakes in the world, and females are usually much larger than males. But the very anaconda from a series of movies measures 40 feet. That's too long even for this extraordinary creature. In real life, the biggest anaconda ever found was 33 feet long and weighed about 880 pounds. Meanwhile, the average length for an adult female anaconda varies between 15 and 16 feet. Anacondas prefer living in swamps and slow-moving streams, mostly in the tropical rainforests of the Amazon and the Orinoco basins. The green anaconda belongs to snakes called constrictors. These snakes are not venomous. Instead, they wrap their bodies around their prey and give it a final hug. Let's say you refused to hug anaconda and continued walking, and suddenly you get bitten by a venomous snake. Everyone knows you should just brace yourself, suck the venom out of the bite, and continue the journey as if it never happened, right? Wrong. This old-school method might seem very epic, but today it's known to cause more harm than good. A venomous snake bite is basically a poorly made injection. The venom doesn't just stay in a bubble under the skin, it gets into the lymphatic system, and it can hardly be removed by suction. But if you manage to do so, you still risk poisoning yourself. Although, technically, swallowing venom is relatively safe, it's still a bad idea. If you have any open sores or cuts in any place from the mouth to the stomach, the venom can still enter the bloodstream and cause damage. Walking is also a bad idea. It's recommended to stay as still as possible to slow down the venom traveling through your lymphatic system. Don't wash the bite. Doctors may use this area to quickly identify the type of snake that bit you, and don't try to change clothing. Any unnecessary movement may cause the venom to move into the bloodstream more rapidly. You arrived at the hospital just in time and the doctors helped you. But unfortunately, your arch enemy is waiting around the corner. He sprinkles a couple of chloroform drops on his handkerchief, puts it on your nose, and nothing happens because we're not in a movie. Chloroform is presented as a common tool to instantly knock someone out in almost every movie where it appears. But in reality, this substance doesn't work so quickly. Even at higher doses, it takes at least 5 minutes for chloroform to start working. And several drops, as it usually appears on the screen, are not considered a high dose. Real doctors widely used chloroform as an anesthetic in the previous century, but it had many unwanted side effects. So later, its usage declined after the development of safer and faster inhalation anesthetics. You run away from the enemy and find yourself trapped in a storage room. There are no windows, but you find a ventilation hatch door. You're not claustrophobic. You can easily escape through a ventilation shaft, right? Nope. Time to debunk another movie myth. Ventilation shafts can be really narrow and dangerous. If you manage to get inside, you'll have to deal with some filters, a fan, and other obstacles. Also, metal edges on the inside can be pretty sharp, which doesn't make the journey safer. And besides, most ventilation shafts are not designed to carry the weight of a human, so it might just fall apart under your body. No big deal. The enemy captures you and takes you on a plane. No time to explain. Let's go skydiving. You're about to shout "Hasta la vista, baby" to your enemy. But unlike in some of the movies, in real life, you cannot talk while you're in free fall. It's impossible to be able to talk whilst 120-mile-per-hour winds are all up in your face. That's why skydivers communicate through hand signals and facial expressions. You land and find yourself in medieval London. But wait a minute, why are all these people so tidy? Thanks to movies, many people imagine those that lived in the Middle Ages as being very dirty and smelling even worse. The myth claims that only rich people bathe and did it only a couple of times a year. But in fact, it's not the case. Unpleasant body odor was associated with sin. So people were expected to do their best to stay fresh, no matter how rich they were. Rich people could afford to immerse themselves in tubs of heated water, while the lower class washed with wet clothes. Also, public saunas and baths were quite common in the Middle Ages, and they were really popular among the common folk too. People went there for the sake of hygiene and socializing, just like in the era of ancient Roman baths. The city of Bath in England was one of the popular destinations. Crowds came from all parts of the country to tidy up and enjoy its famous natural hot springs.
Hey, here's a question. Does hitting the snooze button give me extra time to rest? Nope. Not only is it untrue, but hitting the snooze button can actually reduce your sleep quality. Those 10-minute pockets of sleep you get aren't the good type of sleep. It's fragmented. If anything, it'll make you feel more tired during the day. And besides, there is such a thing as too much sleep, and oversleeping can make you even drowsier during the daytime. It can affect your metabolism and your energy levels too. I know, breaking up with the snooze button might be really painful. So here's a few things that you can do to make the transition easier. First of all, set a realistic alarm. If you're more of a night owl, don't force yourself to wake up really early in the morning if you don't have to. Find a sleep schedule that works for you, and most importantly, stick to it. Next, get out of bed as soon as you wake up. The change in posture will trigger the right chemicals in your body, which will prevent you from going back to sleep. As a last resort, you can move your alarm clock across the room. If you need to get up out of bed to hit the snooze button, you'll be less likely to go back. That's what I do at home personally. It seems like there's a whole bunch of urban legends and rumors people believe about the way sleep works. Alright then, let's dedicate this video to breaking down truth from lies so you can finally get a good night's rest. Alright, next up. Am I a good sleeper if I can fall asleep anywhere? Definitely not. On average, it takes us 20 to 30 minutes to fall asleep. If this period is longer, it may be a sign of insomnia. But if it takes less time than that, you may actually just be sleep deprived. It can also mean that the sleep you're getting even if it's the recommended 7 to 9 hours a night, is fragmented or disturbed? Do dreams only last a few seconds? It's complicated. Some of them do, but not all dreams are the same. There are a lot of things that we've yet to understand about dreams, but what we do know is that they mainly happen during the rapid eye movement stage of sleep, called REM for short. This is when your brain activity is almost as strong as it is when you're awake. They call it rapid eye movement because during it, your eyes literally move rapidly around, as if trying to see all the images that your brain is generating. Dreams can happen during other stages of sleep too, but you're less likely to remember those. As for the length of each dream, they can go anywhere from a few seconds to 20 to 30 minutes. And if you remember a dream very vividly, it's because you probably woke up during the REM stage. Most people have 3 to 5 dreams per night, but some can see up to 7. Does napping make up for lack of sleep at night? This one is definitely a myth. But taking naps does have its advantages, if done correctly. If you want your nap to work for you, it shouldn't be longer than 10 to 20 minutes. These kinds of short sleep intervals can help you feel more energized during the day and even improve your memory. But they can't cure your body if it was sleep deprived during the night. If you've had a week of really bad night's sleep, it's going to take more than a week of good, meaningful rest to get back to normal. But if you're looking to catch up on sleep, the best approach is just to be consistent and stick to a schedule that works for you. Also, give it time. You definitely won't see results overnight. If I pulled an all-nighter, do I need to go back to sleep as soon as possible? Surprisingly, sleeping as soon as you're done with an all-nighter can actually make it worse and negatively affect your general sleep pattern. But there are some tips that can help you recover faster, like taking a short nap, as we mentioned. You should also plan to go to bed earlier the following night. Don't splurge on those lattes either. Too much caffeine can make it more difficult to fall asleep at night. Go for something caffeine-free, or even a cup of tea. I'm a tea guy myself. What you eat is also very important. Try to go for a nutritious breakfast packed with protein. If you're in a hurry to get to that exam that you've been studying for the night before, a protein shake can be the best on-the-go solution. Don't forget to get some fresh air and natural light too. After a whole night spent indoors, some sunlight will do wonders for your energy levels. It'll also improve your sleep quality for the next day. Can my sleeping position influence my sleep? Absolutely. And the best way to figure out what works best for you is to keep a sleep diary for a week or two. Try switching between sleeping on your back, on your side, or on your stomach. Of course, you don't have to change your favorite sleeping position if you're not having any issues. Just make sure that you wake up well rested. If you do experience problems, here are a couple things that you can try. For example, if you have neck pain, you'll probably rest better on your back or on your side. You can also try using a thicker pillow when sleeping on your side and a thinner one when resting on your back. If you have sinus issues that keep you up at night, like coughing or feeling congested, you can try sleeping on your back with your head a little more elevated. A thicker pillow should do the trick. If you have hip or knee pain, try sleeping on your back, but place a pillow or a rolled up towel underneath your knees. It should reduce the pressure on your spine and help relieve the pain. However, in almost no circumstances should you be sleeping face down. This position can really mess up your spine due to all the neck twisting that's necessary. Is it better to be a morning person than a night owl? Nope. It's up to the individual. But being a morning person may be easier. People that wake up early adapt better to the schedule of modern society. Most people work from 9 to 5, and schools also start early in the morning. So if you're a night owl, you might find it harder to adapt to your day-to-day responsibilities. The downside of waking up early, though, is that you might find it more difficult to maintain social connections, like going out to dinners or parties if you have an early bedtime. There is one nice advantage to being a night owl if you're more on the creative side, though. Writers or artists often find it easier to work during the night when there's less noise. Can I cure jet lag by not sleeping at night? The short answer is no, but let's break it down a bit. First, you experience jet lag when your regular sleep pattern is affected after a long flight when you switch time zones. How to tell if you're jet lagged? You find it difficult to fall asleep at night and wake up in the morning in your new location. You can't stay awake during the day or even have concentration or memory issues. There's no way to prevent jet lag, and there's no treatment. For most people, it gets better after a few days if you allow your body to adjust. But there are some things you can do to reduce the effects of jet lag, like getting more sleep before the flight, staying hydrated on the plane, and cutting down the amount of caffeine you drink. Once you've reached your destination, try to adapt to the new time zone as quickly as possible. That means sleeping during the night, setting an alarm to avoid resting during the day, and getting as much sunlight as possible. Natural light will trick your body into adjusting to the new conditions faster. Do I have insomnia if I can't fall asleep? That's only part of the whole insomnia equation. Insomnia can mean a lot of different things. Sleep onset insomnia is when you can't fall asleep. You know, the whole tossing and turning routine. Falling asleep should happen anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes after getting in bed. Any longer than that, and it may indicate a problem. Sleep maintenance insomnia is when you can fall asleep in the evening but wake up during the night and find it difficult to doze off again. Early morning awakening insomnia is when you wake up way earlier than planned. This can influence the quality of your sleep and your mood throughout the day. It can also affect not only your energy levels, but also your overall health, performance at work or school, and quality of life. At some point, many adults experience short-term or acute insomnia, which lasts for several days or weeks. The most common source is long stress. If this lasts for a month or more, it probably means chronic insomnia has set in. Do I have sleep apnea if I snore? Sure, snoring can be a sign of sleep apnea, but it's not the single cause. It's not really a problem if you snore just once in a while. Most of us snore a bit when we have a cold or during allergy season. Real sleep apnea is a completely different story. It is a sleep disorder in which breathing repeatedly stops and starts during the night. Is more sleep always better? I'm afraid not. Let's look at the recommended sleep intervals depending on your age. Newborns, from 0 to 3 months, need the most amount of sleep each day, about 14 to 17 hours. This includes naps and nighttime. By the time we go to school and until our teenage years, we should be getting 9 to 11 hours of shut-eye a day. Teenagers need 8 to 10 hours of sleep every day, and by the time that we reach adulthood, we should be good with about 7 to 9 hours. As we grow older, say by the time that we reach 60 to 65 years, we start to need less and less sleep, somewhere between 7 to 8 hours. We also start to naturally wake up earlier. If you have a healthy lifestyle, technically you shouldn't need more sleep than that. But if you feel groggy even after 7 to 9 hours, something else is probably to blame. You may be sleeping in the wrong position or drinking too much caffeine, which could mess up your sleep pattern. Are nightmares and night terrors the same thing? No, but they do have some things in common. First, they're both part of a group of sleep disorders called parasomnias, unpleasant events happening when we sleep. We've all heard about nightmares, which are usually more realistic and vivid. They get increasingly disturbing as they progress, but most of the time, they end when you wake up. After a nightmare, you often feel either scared or embarrassed, depending on the dream. All of us have experienced nightmares at some point in our lives. Night terrors are a bit more of an active story. They can involve loud noises and movements accompanied by intense fear. They're also very short, lasting between a couple of seconds and a few minutes. Younger people tend to be more affected by night terrors. During such an episode, you may even start to move around and talk. After you wake up, you're confused, and you probably won't remember what you've been dreaming about. Can melatonin make you fall asleep immediately? Melatonin is a hormone produced by a little thing in your brain called a pineal gland. This substance is produced in response to a low-light environment. That's why we also call melatonin the hormone of darkness. There are a lot of things that can affect our natural melatonin levels, like being exposed to artificial lighting after sunset. That's why some people resort to supplements containing melatonin. But does it make you fall asleep like magic? Not really. It takes quite a bit of time to start working. And of course, before you decide to add melatonin to your daily routine, consult your doctor. Whew, that's a lot of myths we just ran through. I don't know about you, but I could use a nap right about now. Why don't I take my own advice and rest my eyes for about 10 minutes? I hope these tips will help you get a much better night's rest from now on. Good night.
Looking for something slimy? Well, many people tend to believe that snails are just slugs with shells. But even though they look so similar, they're completely different species. Slugs don't need any protective shells, as all their internal organs are, well, internal, inside their slimy bodies. They can squish themselves and get into hard-to-reach places, which is why slugs can often be found in the most unlikely spaces, like under tree bark, or inside tiny crevices, or at the library pretending to study for exams. Snails, on the other hand, are tightly connected with their shells and can't survive without one. Unlike hermit crabs, which replace their shells as they grow, snails are born with a shell on their back. Baby snails look adorable with those fragile translucent bubbles that calcify and become bigger and tougher with age. Cute? Well, you be the judge. Many of the snail's internal organs are inside the shell too, meaning that if it gets crushed or damaged, well, the animal would probably not survive. Still, a snail can repair small scratches and cracks in the shell with the help of proteins and calcium secreted by its mantle. Now, turtles are very close to snails in this regard, by the way, because contrary to common myth, they can't leave their shell at a whim either. A turtle's shell is an integral part of its body, and despite the reptile being able to hide its head and paws inside to protect itself from predators, its skeleton is fused with the hard shell, and just like any other animal skeleton, it grows with the turtle itself. Now, koalas do only eat eucalyptus leaves, but there are over 600 different kinds of those, and koalas only munch on 30, or just 5% of what's available on the menu. So it has to be a very specific eucalyptus tree to make a good meal for a picky koala. These adorable creatures also have something in common with domestic cats. They sleep for 18 to 20 hours a day. Polar bears aren't at all white. Their skin is black under the fur. They need the white color to disguise themselves while on the hunt. The color black absorbs the sun better than any other, while white fur doesn't stop sunlight. Rays pass right through it. In a sense, a polar bear has transparent fur. There's a myth that dogs and cats see the world in black and white. In reality, they just can't distinguish some colors. Nobody knows how exactly dogs see. Some think they only distinguish two colors. Could be blue and yellow for all we know. But they can see shades of other colors better than people. And cats have wonderful night vision. They need about 7 times less light than a human to see in the dark. Now, giraffes were thought to be mute, but recently it's been found that they make low-frequency sounds at night to communicate with each other. During the day, they don't say a word and warn each other of danger in a very unusual way, by moving their well-developed eyebrows. It's likely that at night it's difficult to see the eyebrows, so they start talking for real. While we're on the topic of giraffes, these animals sleep much more than 30 minutes a day, but probably not as much as you do. Their sleeping pattern is quite typical. After researchers monitored a herd of giraffes, they found out they slept at night and took short naps in the afternoon. In total, each giraffe had around 5 hours of sleep every day. Oh, and by the way, a herd of these guys is actually known as a tower of giraffes. Makes sense with the long necks. Seagulls can drink seawater. There are salt-secreting glands near their eyes. These glands purify seawater very quickly, and the salty residue comes out through the nostrils. Yep, you guessed it, salty snot. The Adelie penguins are real romantics. They only have one partner for life. The male must give a smooth stone to the female to create a family. You could say that's kind of an engagement ring. Like humans, though, a female penguin may refuse and not accept the ring. Speaking of animal love, foxes are romantic too. Male foxes are good fathers and husbands. They're devoted to their loved ones for life. They look after the females and even pick fleas from their fur. Aww. Male foxes improve their whole houses and take an active part in their baby's upbringing. Dolphins can sleep with one eye closed and the other one open. Half of the brain dreams and rests, and the second half closely monitors the environment for signs of danger. The perfect brain for sleeping during boring classes and meetings. Hey, I didn't say that. Besides, dolphins manually control their breathing. They can simply drown if their whole brain is sleeping. Sea otters are the cutest sleepers among all animals. In the summer, because of the heat, sea otters spend all the time in water. They swim on their backs and sleep in that position. The babies are sleeping on their mother's stomach, and two adults hold each other by the paws so that they're not carried apart by water currents. Ostriches don't stick their heads in the sand when threatened. In fact, these guys don't bury their heads at all. This myth has spread thanks to that famous idiom to hide one's head in the sand. In real life, ostriches have to dig holes in the sand for their eggs because they're flightless birds. To make sure they're evenly heated, ostriches put their heads in there to rotate the eggs from time to time. But ostriches still have some escaping mentality. When they face some threat, they can flop to the sand and stay perfectly still, pretending they aren't alive. Now, according to a popular misbelief, sharks can breathe only while moving because swimming helps them push water over their gills. Although many kinds of sharks are designed this way, many others, like bottom-dwelling nurse sharks, don't need swimming to pump oxygen-rich water over their gills. Meanwhile, all sharks do lack swim bladders, so if they stop swimming, they'll probably sink to the bottom. But luckily, a shark's body can't be compressed. That's why rapid descents or ascents are safe for them. Scientists from Japan played audio recordings for cats to prove they're truly dismissive. In those recordings, the owners of the cats called them by their names. Cats' pupils dilated, the animals moved their tails, legs, or ears. Cats heard people, but rarely responded. It's all about evolution. Cats came to people because they were attracted by mice that ate grains. They lived close to people, but were never tame. And yet, we keep feeding them. Birds are actually the only surviving dinosaurs. They evolved from theropods, the dinosaurs that ran on two legs. Yep, T-Rex is a distant relative of chickens, ostriches, and even hummingbirds. In reality, flamingos are white. The bird turns pink due to beta-carotene. This pigment is found in the algae and the shrimp that it feeds on. You can change your color too. If you eat a lot of carrots, your skin will turn slightly orange. This will happen because of the high beta-carotene content in the vegetable. Sailors from all over the world talked about the giant squid they met on their voyages. For many years, scientists considered monsters with long tentacles to be a myth. But in 2004, the first photo of a giant squid was taken. They actually exist. Scientists have registered an animal that has grown to 43 feet. Mosquitoes actually bite some people more than others. The most delicious humans are those with type O blood. Also, these insects have really good eyesight. They're attracted by green, black, and red colors. So, check the color of your clothes before you go camping. You can actually put a shark in a trance for 15 minutes. To do this, you need to stroke the nose of a dangerous animal with your hand. This sort of hypnosis is called tonic immobility that happens thanks to the receptors in the shark's nose. When stroked, the receptors send a lot of signals and the shark's brain is unable to process them all. Now, what it doesn't say here is exactly how you get close enough to a shark to rub its nose. I'd say that's important information, don't you think? Elephants aren't afraid of mice per se, but these massive animals have bad vision. They also move fairly slowly. That's why they can get startled by a bird or a small creature, like a mouse, darting past them. Just the element of surprise, nothing more. The chameleon can change its color, but this creature doesn't do it to camouflage itself. The color change helps the animal regulate its temperature and communicate with peers. Now, when most dogs pant, their tongues hang out of their mouths. That's why many people think that's how they sweat. In reality, dogs' sweat glands are located on their paw pads. Plus, there are other sweat glands all over their bodies. Dogs pant to evaporate moisture from their nasal passages, tongues, and the lining of their lungs. This also helps to cool them down. You might leave wasps alone, but don't be so sure they'll do the same. Bees do respect human boundaries, and if you don't bother them, they won't hurt you. But wasps are so bad-tempered, they can sting you even if you're just walking by their nest. Well, phooey on them. The broad, flat-brimmed hat has become something of a trademark of every cowboy out there, but nobody actually wore them on the frontier. Cowboys, or more accurately, cattle hands, were mostly illiterate men who did dirty jobs in equally dirty rags, and those hats were expensive, like really expensive. Such men couldn't afford them even if they wanted to, and they didn't. Broad hats were impractical since they were heavy and got in the way. Most cowboys favored light bowler hats instead. Now, imagine that legendary Clint Eastwood squint from beneath the brim of a bowler. Nah, let's keep the broad ones in the westerns. How come firefighters extinguish fire so fast? Is their water wetter or something? Well, actually, yes, it is. It's a pretty recent addition, but firefighters add certain reagents to the water to reduce its surface tension. As a result, it becomes easier to spread and soak into objects. The finding of a jar of perfectly edible 1,000-year-old honey during archaeological excavations gave birth to a myth that honey can never spoil. If you buy some honey, take off the lid and store it in a humid environment. The treat will spoil quite soon. On the other hand, honey has antibacterial and antifungal properties, so no germs can live inside it if stored properly. With the lid closed and the conditions dry, it really won't go bad in your entire lifetime. You might have heard that the pink hue your strawberry frappuccino has to it is achieved thanks to crushed bugs. And that was true until 2012. Little critters called cochineal bugs were ground up to make red dye. This method is still used by many companies, but you won't find the bugs in your coffee anymore. That's good. You surely heard the story about Albert Einstein having been really bad at math in school. To all those who think they can match his genius even having bad grades, sorry. When he was told this story in 1935, Einstein just laughed and said he had mastered differential and integral calculus before he was 15. I just hope it wasn't on the school curriculum back then. The myth was invented in the 1930s by Ripley's Believe It or Not, a newspaper dealing in bizarre facts. The trouble is, it never cited any credible sources, so not a single claim about Einstein stood up to scrutiny. Now, when people say the sixth sense told them something, they mean something apart from the usual touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing. But the phrase could be correct as well if we said the eighth sense, or even the 25th sense. Hey, I can always use 25 cents. There are several points of view on the actual number of our senses, with the largest one discussed being 53. Proprioception, for example, is the feeling of your body position. If you can close your eyes and touch your nose with a finger, congrats, you have it. Okay, you probably heard a lot of stories about various things hiding on the dark side of the moon. There's just one catch here. There's no such thing as the dark side of the moon. Our natural satellite is tidally locked with the Earth, which means we're always looking at the same side of it. But the sun doesn't follow the same rule, and it shines on the other side of the moon just like on everything else. And it's only logical. Solar eclipses wouldn't be able to occur if the sun didn't bring light to the other side of the moon. After all, it's exactly the moon blocking the sun at those points. By the way, eclipses happen because the sun is 400 times more distant from our planet than the moon, but it's also 400 times bigger. So the effect is full blocking of all light that only leaves that ominous ring. Now, if you happen to be a sushi lover, you might already know that the green paste they usually serve with it isn't actually wasabi. It's simply horseradish, dyed green to look exotic. The real thing has a milder taste, and it's pretty expensive too. It's easy to tell if it's real or not too. If it isn't made right in front of you, then it's not wasabi. Speaking of whales, and I was about to, the blue whale is often referred to as the largest living thing that ever, lived. And it's true that this gentle giant is enormous. But alas, it's not even close to the real record holder, honey mushroom that resides in the Blue Mountains of Oregon. Looking at it from the surface, you won't be able to tell that you're staring at something massive. In reality, though, it's a single fungus that covers an area of 1,350 soccer fields, most of it underground. What's more, it's not just old, but pretty much ancient. Its age is estimated at 2,400 years, but might be up to 8,650 years. No one can say for sure. Still, the blue whale is not even second in a row. That honor goes to Pando, the trembling giant. It's a quaking aspen in south-central Utah that looks like a huge forest, but is actually a single organism. All the trees in a 108-acre area grow from a single root system. But what's even more astounding than its size is Pando's weight. Taken together, its roots and trees weigh about 6,000 tons, which makes it the heaviest organism in existence. It might be okay to deflate your tires a little bit when you're stuck in deep snow, but driving like that when you're out of control is an unreasonable risk. Deflated tires decrease your level of control over the car, especially on an icy road, and you're more likely to get stuck in a snowdrift again. So, instead of deliberately deflating your car's tires in the winter, make sure you have chains or studs on them for better grip, and put some essentials into your trunk to help you out in case of trouble. Those include a shovel, a tow rope, and a bag of sand, salt, or if you don't have either, some kitty litter. Best if it's mineral-based, of course, but even the silicone kind will do in a pinch. Diamonds are very special gems, and their cost is justified by their beauty and rarity, right? Not exactly. In fact, they're not as rare as we've been all led to believe, and scientists have even found a way to create artificial diamonds, making their production rather easy. But they still cost a lot, though. The secret lies in a really good marketing campaign that dates back 100 years. The company that mined and sold diamonds successfully spread myths about these gems around the world. Not only they convinced everyone on the planet that diamonds are rare and thus have to be expensive, but also made everyone believe that only these rocks are synonymous with romance and engagement. Despite bats being disoriented in the light of day, that's not because they're blind. Their eyesight is actually even better at nighttime than ours. They just see everything in the shades of black and white, so it's hard for them to navigate when there's so much light around. The myth about bats being blind probably arose from the fact that they use sonar to find their way. Now, I probably don't need to tell you our planet isn't round. Its shape even has a special name to it, geoid. But saying it's closer to elliptical or some other proper shape would be incorrect either. The Earth constantly spins at a mind-blowing speed, making it a bit elongated, true, but the tectonic plates moving inside it also affect its shape. Although that twisting and churning underneath is very slow, a couple of inches per year, tectonic movements make the Earth's surface rise at some places and dip in others. Eventually, the planet looks more like a misshapen balloon than anything else. Now, one of the most common animal myths is that mice love cheese. It popped out a long time ago, probably as early as when people started storing food. Since mice are regular visitors to human homes, they were constantly looking for food they could eat. People used to store grains in glass jars. They also kept their meat hanging up high. But they'd lay the cheese on the shelf, which was an easy target for all the unwelcome pantry visitors like mice. So they ate it because they couldn't reach anything better. But a mouse will definitely more likely go after chocolate or some other sweet thing than the cheese. Who can blame them? Now, flamingos don't really stand in the water on one leg so they wouldn't get cold. This is just a simple way for them to spare the effort. It's exhausting for us humans to stand on one leg, but for them, this is the most stable position possible considering their peculiar anatomy. This pose doesn't require any muscular work. Now I'm jealous. One of the most widespread and oldest myths out there is that ostriches hide their heads in the ground every time they're scared. A long time ago, researchers thought ostriches weren't very smart because they bury their heads in the ground without being aware the rest of their large bodies are still out there, where everyone can see them. In fact, ostriches do it when they want to swallow sand and pebbles to boost their digestion or just turn over the eggs they lay in their nests. And even then, they technically don't bury their head, but put it near the ground. Otherwise, with its head in the sand, the poor thing wouldn't be able to breathe. No reason to think of an ostrich as a frightened bird. Like some other animals, it will flee if it senses there's a danger coming. And in some situations, it'll fight back and defend itself. And that's one angry bird. What do you think is the largest thing a blue whale can swallow? Well, we're talking about the biggest animal ever known to have lived on our planet. It can grow up to 100 feet long with a weight of 200 tons. Its heart is as big as a car, and its tongue can weigh as much as an average elephant. It's easy to imagine a blue whale swallowing cars, people, and even small ships, perhaps. But it's all wrong. The largest thing it can actually swallow is a grapefruit. Its throat can take the size of a small salad plate. Whales feed on small fish, plankton, and marine crustaceans, so they don't need a bigger throat. But we wouldn't be able to survive the juices inside a blue whale's stomach anyway. It would finish us within 15 seconds, similar to how long we'd last in space without a spacesuit. So don't try this. Camels don't store water in their humps. We're talking about animals with extraordinary resistance to some pretty extreme conditions. They can survive even when drinking water only every 8 to 10 days. But not because they have a secret stash on their back. It's because, when they have a chance to drink, they will swallow 50 gallons of water at one sitting. They mostly use it to replenish 30% of their total body weight, an amount they can lose by dehydration. So, they lose a lot of water but quickly regain it. Their humps are where they deposit fat, but it's not for producing water. The oxygen camels would need to inhale would cause them to lose too much water because it would evaporate through their lungs. That's why they use fat as a nutritional source for energy. This helps them survive in arid regions and times of scarcity. Now, it's a myth that anteaters vacuum ants using their noses. They don't go around looking for ants and hoovering them through their long snouts. Anteaters have very long tongues. Giant anteaters have tongues that go up to 2 feet long. It's the shape of a strand of spaghetti and covered in spiny hooks and sticky saliva that traps ants, up to 160 times in a minute, which means they eat up to 20,000 insects in a single day. That's a lot of bugs. They open anthills using their claws and then do the rest of the work with the tongue. They don't have teeth, so they only swallow all the insects they catch. Movies might have given you a false sense of security when it comes to dinos. Nope, standing very, very still couldn't save you from a raging T-Rex coming after you. It's a myth. The Dino King had bad vision. These beasts may have seen better than modern-day raptors. They had excellent depth perception, something present in today's animals such as eagles and hawks. Even if, by some miracle, the Dino King can't see you or thinks you're just a small tree or some other object because you're standing so still. They had a pretty good sense of smell. So, the better option would be to run because the T-Rex is not as fast as scientists used to think, up to 33 miles per hour. Considering their anatomy, they could move at a speed of 12 miles per hour. Anything faster than that would have caused serious bone damage. But this didn't stop them from ruling the animal world because there were plenty of dinosaurs way slower than them, so they didn't have to worry about food. Another misconception states that owls can spin their heads, neither more nor less than 360 degrees. Their head spinning does have its limit, 270 degrees in one direction. Since they can turn 270 degrees to the left and right, owls have a 540-degree range of motion. Don't worry, if you touch a butterfly's wings, the animal won't lose its ability to fly. It will survive, despite the common myth that says the opposite. Butterfly wings have scales. When you touch them, some scales might shed off, but it's not a bad thing, because they shed off naturally too. Because of sheddable scales, they can escape more easily if they get stuck and trapped in spider webs. Now, the next myth has inspired many movies, books, and TV series scenarios, but no, wolves don't howl at the moon. They typically howl at night, true, but because that's the period of time when they're most active. They'll also look up while howling since this helps the sound travel. That way, other wolves will hear them from around 6 to 7 miles away. And that's why they howl in the first place, to communicate with each other. They make specific sounds for a certain situation. For example, to help a wolf that lost its pack find its way home. The moon just happened to accidentally be there while wolves were communicating. Okay, giraffes only need 30 minutes of sleep a day. That's another myth. They sleep about 4.5 hours daily. It's not that unusual for animal species that are most active during daylight. Studies also showed giraffes usually lay down to sleep for less than 11 minutes at a time. Many people believe moles are blind. These small burrowing mammals actually can see. It's just their vision is really poor and only adapted to recognize light. They're also colorblind. When they're searching for food and navigating the dark underground, these creatures mostly rely on their touch and sense of smell. Now, their sense of touch is sharp, which is why moles can feel nearby vibrations of activity. This helps them avoid danger or find their next meal more easily, like millipedes, worms, centipedes, and other invertebrates. Yum! They're really fast at digging and can dig a couple of inches per minute. In the winter, animals hibernate not because it's too cold for them to be outside, but because there isn't enough food during that period. When an animal is in hibernation, its heart rate, body temperature, breathing, and other metabolic activities slow down significantly. That's how they conserve energy. Chipmunks, bats, turtles, snakes, they all hibernate during the winter, which saves them energy for other seasons when they get more active and are capable of getting more food. I'd say bears too, but they're not the true hibernators. If you try waking one up during the winter when you believe the animal is sleeping, you might end up having a bad time. Now, they do slow down, which means they sleep for extended periods of time. They're still not asleep for the entire winter season, and you can easily wake them during their sleep, so let's not. Now, don't believe myths. Earwigs won't lay eggs in your ears. Yup, despite their name, they're not that interested in your ears. Well, at least there's no evidence they'd want to go there. They prefer to spend their time in dark, moist places, such as under tree bark or in soil. So, your ears are off the hook. Hi, do chameleons only change color for camouflage? No. They can actually change colors to reflect their mood. So, males turn a bright color to show their dominance, and they become darker when they get aggressive. Chameleons also change color to adapt to different temperatures. A cold chameleon will turn dark to absorb more heat, while a smoking hot chameleon will turn itself pale to reflect the sun's rays. By the way, do comedians change color for camouflage? Only if their jokes aren't getting any laughs. Okay, I made that up. Now, there's a myth that if you drop a penny from a skyscraper, it'll pretty much destroy whatever's underneath. But when put to the test, researchers found that it just isn't true. On its way down, a coin can't gather enough velocity to cause permanent damage to anything, mostly because of wind resistance and the penny spinning around and stuff. Anyway, just hang on to your change. Now, some people believe that toilet flushes spin in the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. Some things are affected by the Earth's rotation, like the Gulf Stream or hurricanes. But toilet flushes are way too small. Flushes can spin in either direction, whether they're in the northern or southern hemispheres. Trust me, I know. The biggest determinant of flush direction is the design of the toilet bowl and the water pressure. There's a popular saying that lightning never strikes in the same place twice. Lightning often strikes near the same place a lot more than that. Lightning generally chooses the tallest, pointiest spot as its target. Researchers have found that the Empire State Building gets struck by lightning almost 100 times a year, and quite a few people have been zapped more than once, like a lot more. So, if you're tall and pointy, be careful out there. So there's a common belief that bats are blind. But bats have better vision than humans at night, although humans can see more clearly during the day. Maybe this myth came about because bats rely a lot on their hearing to get about. Or maybe it's because bats see the world in black and white. Now, do goldfish really have short memories? Well, most people put it at 7 seconds. In reality, goldfish can remember things for as long as 7 months. Without a good memory, goldfish who live in nature would never find food. Did anyone ever tell you that a mother bird will reject its offspring if they've been touched by a human? That would be nuts, because most birds don't have a developed sense of smell. they'd never be able to identify the scent of a person. The vulture is an exception to this rule. It has an amazing nose, but then who'd want to touch a vulture anyway? Ostriches bury their heads in the sand when they're scared, except they don't. This myth probably came into being because an ostrich's head is disproportionately small in comparison to its body. So, from a distance, it looks as if the ostrich has its head stuffed in the sand. But if it really did that, it would pass out from not being able to breathe. Another myth is that opossums hang on branches with their tail. The opossum does use its tail to help it climb trees, but its tail can't support its weight. Even a hulked-out calisthenics master opossum could only hang there for a few seconds max. Legend has it that a penguin will fall backward when looking up at an aircraft. Cutest myth ever. Penguins can maintain their balance no matter what, even while looking up at the sky. But low-flying airplanes may cause penguins to flee their nests in panic. Do dogs really sweat by salivating? No, they sweat through their foot pads. But salivating and panting does help them regulate their body temperature. Cat owners may think that a cat only purrs when it's happy. But cats also purr when they're hungry, distressed, or recovering from an injury. Researchers think that purring may be a self-healing trick. Somehow, it keeps their bones and muscles working better. Legend has it that if you run into a skunk, there's only one possible outcome. You're gonna stink for a while. But skunks prefer to flee from danger rather than spraying their magic juice around. That smelly spray's their last line of defense. Before that, they usually stomp their feet and slap their tails to ward off any danger. Did you know there's an alpha wolf in every pack? Except again, there isn't. Unlike captive wolves, wild wolves don't share this kind of social order. They live in family groups like humans, where the parents are the leaders and the little ones gotta do as they're told. There's a myth that owls can turn their heads full circle, but that would cause them significant damage. But still, they can turn their heads comfortably more than halfway around because of their unique neck bone structure. If you've ever poked a turtle's shell thinking it won't hurt the guy inside, you'd be wrong. A turtle's shell is a living and feeling part of its body, with a complete nerve-ending supply. If the shell gets damaged, it can even endanger the turtle's life. There was a time when people thought that unwashed hair was the ideal habitat for head lice. But head lice don't discriminate. No, they can make themselves a home in all hair types. All they really want is a warm scalp. Most people are familiar with the phrase, "an apple a day keeps the doctor away." Apples are good for you, sure. They're packed with nutrients like fiber and vitamin C. But does anyone really think that's enough? When it comes to food hygiene, the 5-second rule just doesn't make sense. There should be a "where you drop it" rule to replace the 5-second one. Generally, if you drop food on your kitchen floor, it's going to pick up fewer bacteria than if you drop it at the checkout counter of a busy supermarket. Of course, that's assuming your kitchen's clean. Uh-oh. Ever wondered whether the story about chewing gum taking 7 years to digest is true? Nah, it isn't. Chewing gum isn't too different from any other food. It takes around the same time to digest, but it's not exactly nutrient-heavy. Legend has it that catching a cold is likelier to happen in cold weather. But studies have shown that weather doesn't really play a part in getting a cold. A virus does. People may experience more cold-like symptoms when the weather is icy cold, but temperature has nothing to do with recovery time or anything like that. Do people only use 10% of their brains? Well, I have some friends who seem to… never mind. No, the answer is no. Scientists who've studied brain scans say they don't show any large dormant areas of the brain. But if the myth is just about humans having a long way to go to reach their full potential, yeah, that sounds about right. One of life's no-nos is to jump into the pool right after eating. But hitting the gym after a big meal can leave you feeling just as uncomfortable as doing a few laps. Also, if you're worried about getting a cramp in the pool, those can happen anytime, not just after a meal. Does shaved hair grow back darker and thicker? Researchers say it doesn't. But shaving does give your hair a blunt tip, which can make it feel thicker. When it comes to color, that new, darker stubble is just an illusion. Some people are convinced that eating turkey leaves them feeling drowsy. It's true that turkey has a chemical that can cause drowsiness, but so does chicken or beef. Turkey's a favorite for those massive family celebrations, so that drowsiness, it's probably due to the huge amount you ate. The myth that people lose most of their body heat through their heads was probably first invented by a hat salesman. Not surprising. Scientists say that people lose only about 10% of their body heat through their heads. You lose heat through your skin, no matter where that skin is. Have you heard the saying that a full moon can affect your mind somehow? And no, but researchers believe that light from a full moon can affect your sleep, which can affect your mood. Did ancient Vikings really wear those awesome horned helmets? There's no real evidence to back up this claim. This myth probably came from books and music, looking to spice up their heroes a bit. If you want to see a Viking with a helmet, go to a Minnesota Vikings game. That's about as close as you're going to get. Some people believe Einstein flunked math in school. Einstein himself debunked this theory by saying he mastered calculus at age 15. But Einstein did fail to enter the school of his choice because he flunked languages on his first try. But math? He passed with flying colors.
Now, cartoons might show it differently, but mice are not actually that into cheese. This myth occurred during the Middle Ages. At that time, many foods rats and mice like way more than cheese were out of their reach. For example, people would store grains in jars or keep meat hanging. But cheese usually matured hidden in cupboards or shelves. Rats and mice could easily get to these spots. So, people would usually find them there, eating not what they liked the best, but what was within their reach. Now, dogs don't see the world in black and white. They do distinguish colors, but not as well as we do. We have 3 types of cones in our eyes, while dogs only have 2 of those. Cones are special photoreceptors that help us perceive colors. Dogs can see certain colors, such as blue and yellow, better than the rest, and they can hardly see red and green. Dogs' mouths are by no means cleaner than humans. They have over 600 kinds of bacteria in their mouths, and their saliva doesn't have any healing properties. They don't sweat through their tongues either. When dogs pant, their tongues hang out, so people think that's how they sweat. But in reality, most sweat glands are on their paw pads and all over their body. They pant to evaporate extra moisture from their nasal passages, tongues, and the lining of their lungs. Panting is also another way to cool down. Opossums have some pretty cool abilities. They have a good memory and immunity to most snakes' venom. They're also very social. But contrary to popular belief, they don't sleep while hanging by their tails. These animals have strong tails, true, and it makes them excellent climbers. But they don't have the necessary muscle structure to hold such a position for a long time. Now, bats are not blind. They are nocturnal animals and might not see well during the day, but their vision is 3 times better than ours during the night. They do lack color receptors, but people can't see colors in low light either. Bats also use echolocation, which is locating things by the sound waves they reflect to detect small insects in the air. Chameleons have the ability to change the colors on their body, but they don't do it just to blend in with their surroundings. They do it to communicate with others of their kind or to regulate the body temperature, not to camouflage themselves. When these animals are in their natural state, they mostly resemble branches or leaves. Now, it sure looks like it, but rhino horns aren't made of bone. They're made of keratin, the same material you can find in your fingernails and hair. A horn is not attached to the rhino's skull. Instead, it's like a very, very compacted mass of hair. It grows throughout the rhino's lifetime, just like our nails and hair. The horn also looks like something a rhino can use for its defense, but that's not always the case. Some animals use their teeth to protect themselves against their enemies. No wonder the teeth on their lower jaws are so sharp. If you press the snooze button in the morning, you're not actually going to get those extra 10 minutes of sleep. It sure feels good to postpone getting up and staying in the warm bed at that moment, but the snooze button makes you feel more tired instead of providing you with extra rest. You see, your brain believes it's going to fall asleep again, which is why it will get harder and harder for you to get up when the alarm rings for the second or fifth time. In the long run, the snooze button may mess with your ability to get high-quality deep sleep. Now, when you mention desserts, I always think of chocolate. Oh wait, I did a boo-boo. Let's start that again. When you mention deserts, most people picture endless sandy areas, hot and dry. But you should define deserts not by temperatures, but by a lack of precipitation. Most of the well-known deserts across the world are indeed hot, but some are extremely cold. For example, there are polar deserts in northern Greenland. Can we talk about chocolate some more? No? Okay. Well, here's another one. Lightning won't strike the same place twice. Not really. In fact, lightning can and often does strike the same spot repeatedly. So, if you get caught in a thunderstorm, better look around. Instead of hiding in the place already struck by lightning, try to find some shelter and avoid touching anything metal. You won't see an owl turning its head a full 360 degrees, even though it may look like the bird is doing it. Instead of eyeballs, owls have eye tubes. These tubes go far back into their skulls. In other words, owls have their eyes fixed in place. That's why they have to turn their heads when they want to see what's going on around them. They can't make a full circle with their necks, but they come very close, 270 degrees, which is 3/4 of a full rotation. Not bad. Cats don't only purr when they feel content and happy. They can also do it if they're sick, scared, or even angry. Despite all stereotypes, these felines don't gracefully land on their feet every time they fall. True, they do have the so-called righting reflex. A cat has a vestibular apparatus inside its inner ear, which is the natural balancing system the animal uses to orient itself. With the help of this system, a cat can quickly figure out how to rotate its head so that the body can follow. In the end, the animal lands on its feet, but this reflex doesn't work every time. Elephants don't use their trunks as a drinking straw. When an elephant is thirsty, it pulls some water into its trunk, then brings it to its mouth and funnels the water inside. In other words, when these animals drink water, it doesn't go through their trunks, the same as people don't drink through their noses. Well, most people. Elephants have huge ears, but they can also listen with their feet. When they want to examine some faraway noise, elephants freeze and lean forward so that most of their weight is on their front legs. Sometimes they even lift one of their front feet. They rely on seismic communication, which means they detect sound waves that travel not through the air, but through the ground. There are many myths about your brain, like its right part is creative and the left one is logical. But your brain doesn't work this way. It's not strictly divided into parts that exclusively cover only one area, like logic or creativity or something else. Actions you take and things you go through are the results of the activity of your entire brain. The cerebral cortex is the part of your brain that consists of two halves, but both of them are connected to many other areas that make up the rest of the brain. So, no neurons in the left part of your brain will turn you into a computer whiz, and those in the right half won't turn you into a poet. Now, you may think your brain shuts off when you fall asleep, but it doesn't. It has slow activity rates when you're in a deep sleep and becomes more active when you're dreaming. During this stage, your brain's activity is almost the same as it is when you're fully awake. Now, not to freak you out, but you don't see with your eyes, hear with your ears, or feel with your skin. For example, you're washing your face, but your skin itself doesn't have sensors for wetness. Your brain uses a combination of multiple sources of information, including temperature, touch, or your earlier experience. That's why you feel that your face is wet. Your brain creates that sensation after analyzing all kinds of different information. Your brain doesn't actually react to things going on around you. It may seem like that. You see a cute little puppy and it makes you smile. Your friend makes some silly joke and you blush. But neurons in your brain don't just wait until something happens to react to that. Instead, they're trying to guess what might happen next all the time.
Your brain starts analyzing your actions and the experiences you've gone through even before it gets data from your ears, nose, eyes, and other organs. Your brain is always working to predict what the world will be like in the next moment and what you will do in this world. So even though you're not actually reacting to the world, this process of prediction is happening so effortlessly and quickly that you feel like you do. Moving on, Jupiter doesn't technically orbit the Sun. When a smaller and less massive space object circles a bigger one, it doesn't travel in a perfect circle. Instead, both of these objects follow their respective elliptical orbits around a barycenter, which is their common center of gravity. Earth is way smaller than the Sun. That's why the barycenter it shares with our star is really close to the center of the Sun. That's why we can't see that our planet's orbit is a little bit off-kilter. But Jupiter is the biggest planet in our solar system. Its weight is more than twice as great as that of the rest of the planets, asteroids, moons, and comets combined. That's why the barycenter of Jupiter and the Sun is a little further from the star's center, around 30,000 miles above the surface. Okay, can we go back to the chocolate? Well, maybe next time. Well, I hate to break this to you, but the Sun isn't really yellow. Technically, the light it gives off is white. It's all because of the atmosphere, our atmosphere. There's an effect called Rayleigh scattering. That's when the gases in the atmosphere bend the light. The same effect is the reason why the sky seems to be blue, or why sunsets look like a stunning combination of reds and oranges. On a lighter note, if you go into space, you won't immediately be weightless. Scientists mostly agree that space begins where our atmosphere is more or less a vacuum, which is 62 miles up. But it's not like you magically become weightless from the moment you pass that point. Let's say you're in a rocket that's speeding up. You'll definitely feel the gravity of our planet. But you'll feel weightless from the moment you start falling down. To orbit something actually means you're falling forever around that particular object. The Moon is orbiting us. We're orbiting the Sun. Our entire solar system orbits around the center of the Milky Way, our galaxy. That's just a crazy cosmic dance where they're all falling toward one another. So, if you're 250 miles above our planet, you'd have to travel 17,500 miles per hour around the Earth to feel continuous freefall. That's the speed at which the International Space Station and people who work there orbit around our planet. Meanwhile, if you turn the thermostat up high, the rate of heating won't increase. It doesn't put more effort in when you set a higher temperature. For example, if you set the thermostat at 85 degrees Fahrenheit, you won't change the heating speed, only the target temperature. If you set it higher, you might end up wasting more energy, and you'd be too hot. Now, the 7 spikes on the Statue of Liberty are not there to represent the 7 continents and 7 seas, as some previously thought. The spikes stand for sun rays, while the circle is there as some halo. It's like when immigrants arrive on a boat, the statue greets them with, "Hello and welcome." Do you still believe that summer is so warm because, at that phase, our planet gets closer to the sun? Well, it's a big fat myth. When it's summer in, say, the northern hemisphere, our planet isn't actually closer to the sun. It's the opposite. The Earth is at its farthest point from the sun during July and at the closest point during January. Summer is warm because our planet is tilted. During its orbit, the Earth's tilt allows the energy coming from the sun to hit us more directly because the angle is steeper. Now, anteaters don't eat ants through their nose. They rip open anthills with their claws and get the ants through the holes with their super long tongues. Those can extend twice as long as their entire heads. The tongues are sticky and covered in tiny spikes, so it's not that hard for them to trap those ants. Anteaters manage to swallow up to 20,000 ants on a daily basis. Now, T-Rex didn't have bad vision. Some research showed that they may have had depth perception even better than today's eagles and hawks do. Also, they weren't as fast as they are in the movies. Based on the structure of their body, they were probably moving no faster than 12 miles per hour. Any quicker than that would damage their bones. But that wasn't a bad thing, because the T-Rex would go after dinosaurs way slower than itself most of the time. Ooh, that's one beautiful butterfly. Ooh, don't touch it. It won't be able to fly again. No worries, it's another popular myth. It'll live and still fly if you touch it gently. Butterflies have scales on their wings, which means some might shed off if you touch them. but those scales will shed off naturally anyway. Such sheddable scales may be the reason why they manage to escape when a spider catches them in their web. Now, wolves really don't howl at the moon. It might make a good movie scene, but in real life, they howl because they're active during the night. They look up not to stare at the moon, but because that way, the sound they make will travel better. The rest of the wolves will hear them from distances of 6 to 7 miles away. They howl to communicate with them and even have a special sound they make when they lose their pack. Wolf packs don't necessarily have an alpha leader. When more wolves get together, they get competitive and want to dominate others. So it might seem one always has to end up as an alpha. But when they're in the wild, they stick with their families to help each other. The elder wolves naturally have higher status, similar to many other animal families. Have you ever heard that giraffes only sleep for half an hour a day? Well, it's false. They sleep approximately 4.5 hours daily. That's fairly normal amongst animals that are active during the day. They tend to lay down and go to sleep for less than 11 minutes at a time. Crocodilia, the order to which crocodiles and alligators belong, can't run as fast as a racehorse. That's a myth. They can reach up to 12 miles per hour when they're on land, but even when they do, they can't move at such speeds for a long time, maybe 60 to 80 feet before they get tired. A really fast human will move at 12 miles per hour while walking, so many people could outrun a crocodile without even breaking into a run. But it's different when they're in the water, when they move at speeds of more than 20 miles an hour. Trying to outswim them is probably not a good idea. Crocodilia are not lizards. They're not even related. They may look similar, but these two are completely separate orders. Archosaurs have two lineages. One includes birds and dinosaurs, and another one includes crocodiles. Lizards have nothing to do with them, the snobs. Alligators and crocodiles are basically the same. Here's another myth. They do come from the same family and look pretty similar, but they had their last common ancestor 65 million years ago. That's a long time ago, back when the primates diverged from species such as bats. They look similar because they have an excellent body structure to survive. It means evolution didn't have to add or remove anything to change that. Sharks can't smell a single drop of your blood from miles away. Whew! They do have a highly developed and enlarged brain area that's in charge of smelling odors, true, that allows some of them to detect very small amounts of blood in the water, like a drop in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. But the ocean is so much bigger, and it's not that calm, which means it will take the odor away. Sometimes, though, when the currents are favorable and the day is good, a shark will smell the potential prey from a couple of football fields away, but not miles. Now, that thing about sharks can't survive if they stop swimming, that's only partially true. Sharks breathe only when they're swimming because that's when they push water over the gills. That's true for some of the shark species, but there are many others that can pump water over the gills and get oxygen without swimming. For example, bottom-dwelling nurse sharks. Now, sharks don't have swim bladders. That means they'll sink to the bottom if they stop swimming. But their bodies are adjusted to such conditions, which means rapid descents or ascents won't really harm them. The asteroid belt isn't that dangerous, at least not like in those movies where spaceships are flying through a dense and chaotic field of rocks smashing into each other. The asteroid belt is a zone that's 200 million to 300 million miles away from the Sun. It's a very isolated and lonely void with a lot of space in between. If you pulled all those asteroids from that belt together, you'd get a mass that's maybe 4% of our Moon. That's why astronauts get really excited when they see just one asteroid smashing into one another. At least something's happening there. Your brain can grow new cells. Well, that's kind of true and false at the same time. Most parts of your brain aren't capable of growing new neurons, but some areas can do it. For example, a part called the hippocampus. It's a very important region of the brain for remembering things, learning, regulating how much we eat, and some other vital biological functions. Many other animal species can regrow brain cells across the whole brain, but that doesn't work for us. Some scientists think it might be because we live longer than many other species, which requires a memory we can depend on. Now, that's why the human brain had to find a way to collect experiences across a long span of years. So, new neurons in the hippocampus, for example, could be there for making new memories and learning new things rather than just remembering the things from the past. Those new brain cells help your brain cultivate your past and use it to chart your future. Or just get yourself an elephant. They never forget. So, you fall right into the heart of the black hole and prepare for a sad end. Well, you don't have to. Falling into a black hole won't necessarily destroy you or your spaceship. You have to choose a bigger black hole to survive. If you fall into a small black hole, its event horizon is too narrow, and the gravity increases every inch down. So, if you extend your arm forward, the gravity on your fingers is much stronger than on your elbow. This will make your hand lengthen, and you'll feel some discomfort, rather significant to be honest. Things change if you fall into a supermassive black hole, like the ones in the center of galaxies. They can be millions of times heavier than our Sun. Their event horizon is wide, and gravity doesn't change as quickly. So the force you'll feel at your heels and at the top of your head will be about the same, and you can go all the way to the heart of the black hole. This myth is busted. The next myth claims we can save the Earth from a giant asteroid with a big bam. The familiar plot is that a spaceship lands on the surface of an asteroid. A team of astronauts quickly drills a hole in it, leaves a present there, and flies away. Then, bam! As a result, the asteroid may break into several pieces and continue on its way to Earth. Well, big chunks of the asteroid fall to our surface, causing a lot of damage. So, our mission is failed. Well, to save Earth, we need a really big bam. Not only outside the asteroid, but right above its surface. When the boom happens, the force of the blast pushes the asteroid slightly downward. Even a slight change in trajectory would be enough to make the asteroid fly past the Earth in the future. Done. Oh, and if you made a big boom on an asteroid, you'd never be able to hear its loud sound. Yeah, we often hear the sound of spaceships and battle in space in the movies, but that's just a myth. Sound is a wave that spreads because of the vibrations of molecules. A person claps a few feet away from you. The sound wave begins to push the first air molecule next to the clap, then the third, fourth, and so on until the wave reaches your ear. So, to spread sound, we need molecules like air or water. In our atmosphere, sound waves spread out just fine, but space is a vacuum, so it's nothing here. You can clap your hands loudly there, but there just won't be any molecules that can vibrate and carry that sound. One more myth about asteroids. We need to fly a little farther than Mars' orbit. Whoa, we're in an asteroid belt, and we constantly have to dodge giant rocks and blocks of ice. We got in some dense asteroid cloud. Not true. The fact is that space is huge, and the distances are incredible. All the rocks and debris in the asteroid belt are only 4% of the way to the moon, so there really aren't that many of them there. To understand the size of the emptiness in space, look at the collision of two galaxies. There are billions of stars in each of them. If we mix them up, it's unlikely there will be any collisions even here. Another myth is that there's zero gravity in our orbit. Imagine you're in a huge box 10 miles up in the air. Now we let go of the box and it starts to fall. You're falling simultaneously with the box at the same speed. And now it's as if you feel zero gravity. Well, the same thing happens in orbit. The International Space Station is 250 miles above the Earth, and it's falling continuously, though not on the surface of the planet, but around it in its orbit. Its speed at this point is about 4.7 miles per second. It could cross the United States from the west coast to the east coast in just 8 minutes. So the astronauts there are experiencing the same thing. They're just falling with the ISS at that speed. Now, let's look at the moon. It always looks at us with one side. This means the moon has a dark side and the sun's rays never get there. Well, that's a myth. The whole point is that the moon is gravitationally locked to the Earth. There are days and nights there too. It's just that this rotation is perfectly aligned with the rotation of the Earth. So, whenever you look at the moon, you only see one side. although there are days when the sun shines there too. So it's not the dark side, it's the far side. And we even have pictures of this place. And there's one of the biggest craters in our entire solar system, the South Pole Aitken Basin. It's as wide as 2 states of Texas. One myth that turned out to be untrue is that people have never actually been on the moon. This is the original spacesuit of the first astronauts who were there. Look at the sole of the shoe. Some people claim there's no way they could have left footprints like this there. Actually, they could. On the moon, the astronauts wore extra boots over their suits, and their soles matched the footprints on the moon perfectly. The astronauts didn't grab them when they left the moon. They left a lot of stuff there too. They even ripped out the armrests of the seats of the lunar module to reduce its weight. Now, the total weight of human trash on the moon is about 187 tons, including several lunar rovers, spacecraft debris, rocket stages, and lunar probes. That's like 3 Boeing 737s. The next myth is about summer. The hot season comes because the Earth approaches the closest distance to the Sun in a year. The Sun warms our planet more, and we all have to go to the beach. Well, not true. Let's draw an axis through our planet. It's slightly tilted on one side, and winter comes when our planet's axis is tilted away from the Sun. But over time, the axis tilts toward the hot star. Then its rays shine at such an angle that it gets warmer. It's true, though, that the Earth happens to be at different distances from the Sun. This is because our orbit is not a perfect circle, but slightly flattened, an ellipse. Normally, we think of the distance to our star as about 93 million miles, but that distance may be longer or shorter than 3 million miles, depending on which point in our orbit we pass. Another myth about the Sun is that it's yellow. Well, let's send you into space for this one. You look out the window and it's white. The Sun only appears yellow to us through the filter of our atmosphere. The composition of the air and its thickness just distorts the light of the star. But stars do come in different colors. Cooler stars have bright orange and red colors. These are usually very old stars, older than our Sun. But young and very hot stars are bright blue. The Sun is about in the middle of the spectrum. You've also heard about how, if you take your spacesuit off in outer space, you'll blow up like a balloon. Well, our bodies are designed to function at atmospheric pressure, like outside. But space is a vacuum. Imagine a huge metal barrel, and we sucked all the air out from there. Add to that a temperature of minus 455 degrees Fahrenheit, and you have space. If you could get into those conditions, all the air pockets in our body, like our lungs, would start to expand. So you really could blow up like a balloon if it weren't for our elastic tissues. They stretch and bend, so you keep your body size. You'll have enough oxygen in your body to last about 20 seconds. Then your brain will begin to starve, and soon you'll pass out. So you won't blow up, and you won't even freeze because you'll be in a vacuum. It doesn't conduct heat. For example, water conducts heat very well, and you feel cold from it instantly. But you feel better in the air of the same temperature. If you're in the vacuum of space, the super low temperature won't be a problem for you. Much worse is solar radiation. On Earth, we have a shield against radiation in the form of the atmosphere. It blocks the harmful rays. In outer space, you would be defenseless. Another myth is related to cell phones. People think that when you dial your friend's number, your phone sends a signal into space. There are a bunch of satellites out there that will pick up your signal and reflect it like a mirror right into your friend's home. No, not true. However, there are satellite phones in the world that work that way. But when you make a cell phone call, your signal is transmitted through a system of cell towers from one to another until it gets to your friend's phone. Oceans cover 70% of the Earth. On average, the ocean is 8 Empire State Buildings deep, and less than 5% of its mysterious depths have been explored. It's even possible to find lakes and rivers beneath the ocean. They're denser than the rest of the water surrounding them, so you can clearly see the difference. When the coral is in shallow waters, intense sunlight can damage the algae living inside it. To protect the algae, the coral produces some proteins that act as some kind of sunscreen for it, so they really don't need to spend money on it. Okay, most of the ocean may not be explored, but what we do know is about 20 million tons of gold is dispersed through its dark waters. It's concentrated in really small amounts, which is why it doesn't pay off to mine it. If we could take it out, every person on the planet would get 9 pounds of gold. When sharks need their morning joe, they go to a cafe too. Back in 2002, researchers found an area in the Pacific Ocean called the White Shark Cafe, where great white sharks come during the winter. They simply hang out, tell jokes, and laugh at stories of how many humans they've scared, and then go back to the coast to scare us a little bit more when the weather gets warmer. Hey, have you had a great white latte? Try one. The widest point of the Pacific Ocean goes from Indonesia to Colombia, and at that part it's 12,300 miles across, over 5 times wider than the diameter of the moon. We might imagine oceans are cold, especially in depths where the temperature is only 40 degrees Fahrenheit. But there's an exception. Water that comes out of hydrothermal vents in the seafloor has a temperature of up to 750 degrees. Humans are the only animals whose brain gets smaller. Yup, as we get older, it tends to shrink. It can do so even because of isolation and loneliness. Other animals, even some of our distant cousins from another side of the family tree, like monkeys and chimpanzees, have no problem with that. I'm guessing television is the probable cause. Our eardrums have nothing to do with the sense of sight, but they still move when we move our eyes. In the average lifetime, our heart beats over 2.5 billion times. I've counted. Our nose can detect over 1 trillion smells, and our lips are hundreds of times more sensitive than the tips of our fingers. 2 of our body parts never stop growing: your nose and your ears. Cockroaches are tough. They can survive harsh conditions and have been around since dinosaurs ruled our planet. But the termite queen beats all that, with a lifespan of 50 years. That's the longest any insect can live. Regular termites live only 1 to 2 years. It's not the water camels store in their humps, but fat. They store water in their bloodstream. Bees can fly really high, more than 29,500 feet, which is even higher than Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on our planet. Sloths are able to hold their breath longer than dolphins. Yup, they slow their heart rates, and they can stay that way for almost 40 minutes. Dolphins have to come to the surface to catch some air every 10 minutes. The moon has volcanoes, and scientists believe these might have been active around 100 million years ago, when dinosaurs still ruled our planet. Wow, the view must have been magnificent. There are watermelons the size of a grape. Cucamelons, if you prefer, mouse melons, actually look like really small watermelons, but at the same time have a citrus flavor. Not just mouse melons, there's also the kangaroo mouse. This animal doesn't feel the need to drink water. It lives in the Nevada desert, and since its habitat is really dry, it simply learned to quench its thirst through seeds it likes to eat. You may think parking is expensive in the area where you live, but it's probably cheaper than a spot you'd pay in Hong Kong. Just a 135 square foot spot placed in front of the center, which is the 5th tallest building in the city, was purchased for almost $1 million. I'll take a bus ticket, please. Speaking of expensive, and I was, the world's priciest hot dog is $169, and you can try it out in Seattle, Washington. I don't have the money, but I am a little intrigued, must admit. An Australian barista set a world record for the most cappuccinos made in 1 hour. 420 of them. That's really a Java jive. You can taste garlic with your feet. Rub a clove right in your feet, of course take the socks off beforehand, and wait for it. The chemical responsible for its unique smell can be absorbed through the skin even though the clove was never in your mouth. By the way, lobsters can try out the same experiment. Well, they actually taste any food with their feet. Okay, researchers have found many things that are evidence of prehistoric animals or our human ancestors that lived thousands of years ago, like bones, teeth, stone tools, and a piece of chewing gum, dating from almost 10,000 years ago. In Tibet, there are black diamond apples that aren't green or red, but dark purple. The place where they grow has plenty of ultraviolet light over the day, while the temperatures drastically go down during the night, which makes the apple skin get a darker color. Australia has a lake of naturally bubblegum pink color. The unusual color is there because of the pigment from a certain type of algae living there. Clouds look so fluffy, like they're made of giant puffs of cotton. But the average one weighs around 1.1 million pounds. So please, stay up there. A farmer from Iowa got hiccups that didn't stop for the next 68 years. First, hiccuping was about 40 times a minute, and after a while, 20 times. He actually spent 70% of his life hiccuping. A million seconds is somewhere around 12 days, and a billion seconds is almost 32 years. Nothing unusual here, just a little bit of good old math that reminds us how cool the time is. Okay, sharks may be scarier than humans, but our teeth are just as strong as theirs, just smaller. Until the beginning of the 19th century, Americans actually thought tomatoes were poisonous. So many tasty meals they missed believing that. Yup, farmers discovered not just people have regional accents, but cows also have different moos, according to the area where they live. Hey, do cows get moody? Giraffes have a tongue that's up to 20 inches long. Ooh, ice cream maybe? Actually, they can bend trees with their tongues. There's a specific type of jellyfish that's actually immortal. Hey, I can see that as a logo for a life insurance company. The Earth is orbiting the Sun, but not at a fixed speed rate. We don't sense it, but it's slowing as time goes by, so our day will become 25 hours long in about 175 million years. So don't plan that extra hour in your schedule just yet. Space is huge, duh. But there's obviously lots of empty spots since there are more trees, 3 trillion, on our planet than stars in the Milky Way, only about 300 to 400 billion. Wow. When someone mentions the biggest desert, you probably picture the endless sandy surface of the Sahara, burning under the hot sun. Well, not quite. The biggest desert is the Antarctic Polar Desert, which covers over 5.5 million square miles in Buffalo. Nah, Antarctica. Sounds strange at first, but the definition says a desert is a place that gets less than 10 inches of precipitation annually. Still, it doesn't say if it has to be hot. Ostriches don't actually hide their heads in the sand. When they sense danger, they lower down their head, neck, and body to the ground, which makes them a little bit less visible to predators. Their light-colored neck blends in with the sand, so it only looks like their head is hidden down there. The first commercial passenger flight happened at the beginning of the 20th century. It was a 23-minute flight that cost $400, which is about $8,500 today, and the plane flew between 2 cities in Florida. A famous Egyptian ruler, Cleopatra, lived closer to cell phones than to the time when the Great Pyramids of Egypt were completed. Well, that's a gap. Speaking of cell phones, every 2 minutes there are more photos taken than in the entire 19th century. Okay, let's add one more to those statistics. Cheese!
Eating before swimming doesn't cause cramps. Everyone knows that you have to wait at least 30 minutes after eating to go swimming. If you don't, you might cramp up, or even worse, sink. This is actually not true. Our bodies are perfectly adapted to swim while full. If you do happen to get a cramp while in the pool for any reason, just relax and float. You'll be feeling fine soon enough. Handling a toad or frog won't give you warts. Warts are caused by a certain virus, which is only carried by humans. The myth came about because of the bumpy, wart-like skin texture of toads and tree frogs. Frogs might not give you warts, but they could still be poisonous, so you shouldn't handle them. You don't accidentally eat 8 spiders a year while sleeping. This old myth doesn't have a leg, or 8 legs, to stand on. Most people sleep with their mouths closed, so in the unlikely event that a spider actually made it to your face, it wouldn't even have the opportunity to go into your mouth. If you sleep with your mouth open though, you're most likely snoring, which creates vibrations strong enough to scare any spiders away. Bananas don't grow on trees. We call the plant that bananas grow on banana trees, but guess what? They're actually an herb. Weirdly, they're most closely related to the ginger family. These trees are really just big stem-like succulents, like aloe vera, jade plants, or cacti. Just don't try peeling cacti like a banana. The banana itself is also technically a berry, like a pumpkin, a cucumber, and an avocado. Sitting too close to a TV won't ruin your eyes. We've all been told not to sit too close to the TV and PC monitor or you'll damage your eyes. Ophthalmologists have said that it can cause temporary strain to the eyes, but long-term problems are rare. If you're nearsighted, chances are you're always going to be, whether you sit too close or not. You don't lose most of your body heat through your head. While it may feel that way during the winter, our body loses heat all over. You need to wear a hat because it's more exposed, unlike the rest of the body, which is kept toasty with jackets and thick pants. Swallowed gum won't stay in you for 7 years. You should definitely avoid swallowing gum. That's not something that's good for you. But just in case you do by accident, you'll be happy to learn that it won't stay inside your body for 7 years. You can't fully digest the gum, but all that happens is that gum leaves your body naturally in a matter of days. Our tongues don't have different sections for tasting. There's no bitter, sweet, sour, umami, or salty sections of our tongue whatsoever. This giant muscle can taste everything all over, so you don't have to worry about keeping specific foods in specific parts of your mouth. Fingerprints might not be unique. Sounds terrifying, doesn't it? Well, the reasoning is actually very simple. We can't check every fingerprint on Earth, so it's difficult to know if they really are unique to each individual. Related people can have somewhat similar fingerprints, and there are over 7 billion people on the planet, so it's almost impossible to check. Sushi doesn't mean raw fish. While many people will think it means raw fish, sushi actually comes from a Japanese word meaning sour rice. And it's the rice that's at the heart and soul of every piece of sushi. That's why you can buy sushi with cooked fish in it in supermarkets. Sharks do have tongues. It's a common debate, but it turns out that sharks do have tongues. Just not the types of ones that you can find on people. Most can't even move them around, so it barely counts. For example, the cookie cutter shark's tongue doesn't help much with eating. Instead, it supports some of the bones around its gills. And no, it doesn't make delicious cookies. You can swallow watermelon seeds. Watermelon is the perfect summertime treat, but worrying about a plant growing inside you can completely ruin it. Not to worry, seeds can't survive and grow inside stomach acid. Watermelon seeds are actually good for you. Flies live longer than 24 hours. Some flies can live for a few days to even years. That's right, those pesky houseflies live a lot longer than you think. Sometimes even up to a month. So trapping one in a room won't make it go away faster. It just means that you won't have access to that room for a long time. Fresh fruits and veggies aren't superior to frozen. Having fresh instead of frozen produce might seem like a no-brainer, but the choice isn't actually so simple. By the time that juicy mango or crisp carrot gets to your local store, it's actually been through a lot. Most fresh produce travels on trucks or ships or planes and gets processed. Once it arrives, it's often covered in pesticides in order to keep it fresh. Now, on the other hand, frozen fruits and vegetables are immediately frozen, keeping all their nutrients and minerals preserved. If you can grow your own produce, though, you can guarantee freshness. The Great Wall of China can't be seen from the moon. The only thing that you can see from the moon is Earth, which is mostly white with blue and patches of yellow and green vegetation. No man-made object is easily visible from this far away. In low Earth orbit, though, cities can be seen during the night and day. These include major roadways, airports, dams, and reservoirs. Hey, I can even see my house from there. Lightning can strike the same spot more than once. This myth has been around for a very long time, and it's just simply not true. Lightning will strike whatever is attracting it, however many times it can. This means that in many cases, it's more likely to strike twice. Just watch the Empire State Building during a lightning storm. It gets hit more than 100 times every year. Saturn's rings aren't solid. When you see a photo of Saturn, It'd be easy to assume that the rings are solid, but they're not. The rings are made up of tiny particles of rock and ice that vary in size, from as small as a grain of sand to as large as a house. Good luck trying to spacewalk on these rings. Cracking your knuckles won't cause arthritis. A lot of people are scared to crack their knuckle joints because of advice from friends and family. The most common myth is that it causes arthritis. Well, this just isn't true at all. One scientist even cracked the knuckles in his left hand for over 60 years and was left with no discomfort whatsoever. Waking a sleepwalker won't hurt them. In fact, the most dangerous thing for a sleepwalker is allowing them to carry on wandering around. Getting them back to bed so they don't hurt themselves is the best way to make sure that they're okay. We use most of our brain percentage. We use far more than the myth of 10%. That's right, especially you, Brightside viewer. Although some parts of the brain have yet to be figured out by scientists, we know enough to debunk this idea. We actually turn parts of our brain on and off and tap into different parts when they're needed. Now, we haven't unlocked any secret powers yet, but hopefully we can find something one day. Bears don't really sleep during hibernation. Bears don't sleep for months on end while hibernating. They actually go into something called torpor. This means that they slow things down in their bodies, but are still able to react to any stimuli around them. If you see one sleeping during winter, just make sure to keep your distance. Chameleons change color to show their mood and to communicate. Chameleons are known as masters of camouflage, but they often don't even use their abilities to camouflage. They actually change color to show when they're feeling a strong emotion. When they're agitated and upset, they'll turn black. When they're happy, they'll stay a bright green or blue. The sun isn't a fireball. The sun doesn't burn as we think of it, like logs on a fire or a gas stove. It glows because it's a giant ball of gas, with nuclear fusion taking place in its core. Our sun isn't yellow or white either. It glows green-blue. The human eye sees all the rainbow colors around it and mixes them together to make the sun's famous golden yellow. Dogs see more than black and white. Asking dogs to read an eye chart or to pick out colors would be impractical, but scientists have been able to figure out the vision of dogs. They see the world through a basic color scheme of yellow, blue, and gray, not black and white. It seems that they also lack the ability to see the range of colors from green to red. Chasing a tennis ball has to do with movement and smell more than color. Salt doesn't make water boil faster. That tiny pinch you put in before your pasta doesn't make any difference to the amount of time it takes to come up to a boil. The same goes for putting oil into the water to stop your pasta from sticking. It doesn't work, but it might still be worth adding some if you want to make sure that the water doesn't boil over. Vikings probably never wore horned helmets. As awesome as they looked, Vikings didn't have a practical use for horned helmets. This look was created for an opera costume in the 19th century, and it's stuck ever since. Get the point? Looking sharp. Some Vikings might have used them, but archaeological finds have suggested that if they did use them, it wasn't very common.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.